Chapter 1259. A cold wind blew, and sand filled the sky. Above the Shumi Buddhist kingdom, the cold eyes clashed, and the endless flames of war soared into the sky. Yes, please. With a deep shout, the two used their ultimate yuan at the same time. Their chi pierced through the sky, and they rode the wind and clouds as they clashed. Boom! With the power to destroy the sky and the power to destroy the world, the two strongest kings of the sanctuary and the underworld officially clashed. The shocking battle shocked the gods and Buddhas. Their attacks were close at hand, and their palms intertwined. Every move was deadly and full of killing intent. With a boom, the two palms clashed again, and the shadow of the stars appeared and exploded. The aftershock separated the two. 10 feet away, they stopped and steadied themselves. The power of the explosion of the Milky Way. How many moves can you take? Luo Jia snorted, and used his ultimate yuan again. The boundless Milky Way appeared, and an even more terrifying power burst out, rushing forward. Boom! The Milky Way exploded, and Ning Chen's figure fell 100 feet. He stopped 100 feet away, and with a cold shout, his ultimate yuan rushed into the sky. Who can resist the power of the 12 styles of spiritual rhino? With injuries, the demon became more and more crazy. He used his demonic chi in his palms, and a waterfall that reached the sky rushed into the 9 heavens. In the sky, Luo Jia focused and slapped down with his palm to block the demonic chi. The sky shook violently. Luo Jia's mouth was red, and he took a few steps back. It's not over yet. Below, Ning Chen took a step and jumped into the sky. He flew above Luo Jia and slapped down with his palm, shocking the sky. With a loud bang, Luo Jia fell from the sky and smashed into the ground below. It was a shocking scene. In the battle of two heroes, the knowing destiny state had suppressed the strongest kings of the sanctuary and gained the upper hand. This freak. In the distant battle, Luo Xingqian's eyelids twitched, and he couldn't suppress the shock in his heart. Everyone knew that the knowing destiny state was strong, but no one knew how strong the knowing destiny state was. In the void, Ning Chen stood in the air and looked down. His calm eyes had a hint of seriousness. He knew that the strongest palace lord of the sanctuary hadn't shown his true strength yet. Among the 12 palaces of the holy region, the masters of the 3rd palace and the 6th palace were the strongest. Previously, he had fought with Saros, the master of the 6th palace, so he knew better than anyone else how terrifying these two palace masters were. It was rumored that Luo Jia's strength was even greater than Shama, the reincarnation of the Arhat. Regardless of whether the rumors were true or false, the strength of the 3rd palace master of the sanctuary was beyond doubt. On the ground below, dust was everywhere. Luo Jia, in his golden armor, slowly stood up. After taking the full blow from knowing destiny, he did not seem to be seriously injured except for a crack on his golden armor. Another monster. In the distance, when Luo Xingqian saw this scene, his expression changed. Why were there so many monsters recently? Were they trying to kill him? Being distracted in battle, aren't you overconfident? The 12th palace master said in a deep voice. It's enough to deal with you. Falling Star calmed himself down and shot 3 arrows at the same time. They chased the stars and chased after the moon, blocking all of the former's escape routes. At the same time, the snow sword moved the world and the mountain river sword realm was unleashed. Behind the Yama ghost mask, Mu Qianshang displayed his shocking swordsmanship and assisted Luo Xingqian to kill the 12th palace master of the sanctuary. At the same time, in the 3rd battlefield, Aaron Ming King and Qi King Lin Yuzhen held their swords and cooperated seamlessly to kill the 8th palace master of the sanctuary. In the 3 battlefields, the 5 Yama kings of the underworld displayed their shocking abilities to stop the sanctuary's invasion. On the ground, Luo Jia walked out of the dust and looked at the various battlefields in the sky. His expression turned colder. The strength of the human race was not as weak as he had imagined. These human kings with the Yama ghost mask were definitely strong even in the primal demon realm. In the void, Ning Chen looked at the figure below and secretly activated his demonic yuan. The real battle was coming. You are strong. Below, Luo Jia said calmly. His figure slowly rose to the same height as the former and stopped. The test is over. Ningchen looked at the man in front of him and said coldly, "It's time for you to show your true strength." "As you wish." With a cold shout, the shadow of the universe appeared around Luo Jia. Thousands of meteorites of different shapes and colors circled around him. The powerful and domineering move showed the vastness of the universe. Luo Jia shouted and the Saint Qi in his body burst out. The dazzling golden light broke through the boundary of the king realm and infinitely approached the legendary sovereign realm. When the ultimate power appeared, the heaven and earth trembled. The Buddhist kingdom was thousands of miles wide and rocks were rolled into waves, crashing towards the knowing destiny state. 9 heavens star-picking hand, rising rain. The powerful ultimate power attacked. Ningchen used the Qilan's ultimate technique again. His hands clasped together and demonic yuan swept out, turning into a black rain that rushed forward. The collision of the two extremes shook the sky and earth. An indescribably terrifying power erupted and everyone in the neighboring battlefields was sent flying. The scene of people being thrown off their feet was shocking. Luo Xingchen, Mu Qianshang and the others stabilized themselves in a sorry state. They looked at the battle in the distance and were shocked. Luo Jia. The 8th and 12th palace masters looked at the collapsed void in front of them and were also worried. It was the first time in thousands of years that they had seen someone push Luo Jia to such a state. After the big explosion, the two figures in the center of the battle took a few steps back at the same time. Blood splashed from the corner of their mouths and they were injured. Their bodies were drenched in blood, and they endured their injuries. With a stomp of their feet, they charged forward again. Fists and palms intertwined in shocking moves. Both of them pushed their cultivation to the limit. The destructive aura between their moves shook the heaven and earth. In the white-hot battle, Ning Chen's body was surrounded by demonic silk, protecting his body. At the same time, the demonic flames swept out. With the support of the flying swan, his attacks were fierce and his power doubled. The 9 nether battle technique, imperial technique, and flying swan technique were used together. The top battle techniques increased the combat power of the knowing destiny state. Power of the universe, starry river shine. In a short distance, the starry river shone brightly. Luo Jia clenched his fist and punched out. The golden stars exploded and the terrifying impact swept out, turning the heaven and earth into nothingness. As the attack approached, Ningchen shouted and the demonic qi around him turned into a raging wave. The boundless demonic might refined the starry river and calmed the sky. 12 moves of spiritual rhino, 100 tides set the sky. With the same invincible power, Luo Jia punched out. The power of the two clashed directly. The power comparable to the Big Bang of the universe vibrated and destroyed their defense instantly. In the big explosion, the golden armor and the demonic silk barrier collapsed. The two figures flew out 100 feet and forcefully stabilized their bodies. Drops of blood fell from the sky. The battle was hard to determine the winner and the loser. It was horrifying. Great! 100 feet away, Luo Jia raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the young man in front of him and said, "You are indeed the successor of the 9 nether bloodline. You did not disgrace your master's name. Palace Master, you are so capable. You shouldn't be a pawn of the heavenly demon clan to invade the human race." Ningchen secretly gathered his demonic qi and suppressed the injuries in his body. The sacred region has never been a pawn of others. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden light around Luo Jia's body shone again. The broken armor was repaired at a speed visible to the naked eye. The golden brilliance was dazzling. Seeing this, Ningchen didn't say anything else. His body was covered with demonic flames and demonic silk. The absolute defense protected his body. The next moment, the two flowing lights, one black and one golden, collided again. The two figures flashed quickly and attacked again and again with the power to destroy heaven and earth, constantly destroying everything around them. They were strong. There was no doubt that they were strong. They were so strong that they shocked the world. The two people who had used all their combat power presented the most amazing battle between the peak of the king realm. The unpredictable final result affected the hearts of everyone present. After 100 moves, The two fists collided and the aftermath of the star explosion spread out. The whole battle was instantly between the two sides. The two blood-stained experts were still full of fighting spirit. It was an ordinary battle, but it was hard to tell who was the winner before the end. This is not good. In the other two battles, the kings of the netherworld and the two palace masters of the sacred region looked more and more gloomy. None of them had expected that the battle would be so fierce. If it continued, they would only end up with a lose-lose situation. Show me your strongest strength. I know you are still holding back. Above the Buddhist land, Luo Jia was surrounded by golden light. He looked at the young man in black in front of him and said in a deep voice, "The 13th prince of the heavenly demon realm was famous for his sword cultivation. Before he attacked, it meant that he hadn't used all his strength yet." In front of him, Ning Chen's expression was cold. He formed a seal with his hands and 8 dragons appeared. Then, ghost chi filled the air and the ghost race's holy weapon was unsheathed. 6 paths of reincarnation, Palace Master, please come to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen moved. His sword opened the underworld. Wherever the sword passed, hundreds of ghosts howled. Seeing this, Luo Jia's expression turned serious. He flipped his palms and 2 huge stars appeared. Saint Technique, Double Star Explosion. This was a move that had never appeared in the world to deal with the strongest opponent in this life. Luo Jia slowly closed his hands. Suddenly, the sky was filled with golden light. The stars collided and rumbled as they merged into one. The golden stars shone on the world. The strongest palace master of the sacred region showed his amazing martial arts. Wherever the holy light reached, all demons retreated. Saints and demons countered each other. Around Ning Chen, the demonic chi immediately showed signs of dissipating. His sword momentum weakened. With a boom, the two moves collided. The ghost chi and demonic chi dissipated. The golden holy light broke through the demonic barrier and severely injured the knowing destiny body. Ugh! With a shocking explosion, heaven and earth were in chaos. Ning Chen's body flew hundreds of feet away. His black robe was dyed red. He was severely injured. How could this be? The sudden change shocked everyone present. Mu Qianshang, Lin Yuzhen, and the others wanted to help, but they were held back by the 2 palace masters of the sacred region. They couldn't get away. At this critical moment, a white flowing light flew from afar and caught the knowing destiny body. A cold look appeared on his handsome face. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Didn't I ask you to stay in hell? Why are you here?" Ning Chen staggered and stabilized his body. The demonic chi around him surged and suppressed the surging blood chi in his body. Sister Qing Ning was worried. "She asked me to come and help you." Mu Qingxue replied faintly. He looked forward and the murderous intent in his eyes grew. "Your Chengying sword has been broken. You are not fit to fight now." Ning Chen reached out and blocked Mu Qingxue behind him. He said in a low voice, "I was careless just now. Since the demonic technique is countered, I won't use it." As soon as he finished speaking, wild bone appeared in Ning Chen's left hand. The black blade and the ghost sword both shot up to the sky. Chapter 1260. In the sky above the Buddhist kingdom, the battle between the underworld and the sacred region was getting more and more intense. The strongest king of hell of the underworld was fighting against the leader of the sacred region's 12 palace lords. After 100 moves, Luo Jia used his golden saint technique, absolute saint force, to break through the defense of the demonic cultivator. The sudden change severely injured knowing destiny. At the critical moment, Mu Qingxue appeared and moved extremely fast, stunning the world. "Back off!" Not wanting Mu Qingxue to be affected by the battle, Ning Chen suppressed his injuries and stepped forward. With a roar, he pulled out his sword and saber. "Again!" Finishing his words, Ning Chen's figure flashed past. He withdrew all his demonic aura and the 8 dragons circled around him. He used the Qi Huang secret technique to strengthen his sword and saber. Boom! With a shocking sound, the sword and saber clashed with the saint technique. The sword and saber radiance spread out rapidly. Boom! Boom! The sword and saber radiance flashed past, splitting mountains and forming valleys. At his cultivation level, every move had the power to destroy the world, shocking the entire Buddhist kingdom. In the sky, Ningchen saw this scene from the corner of his eyes. His cold eyes didn't change at all. He knew that if he couldn't stop the invasion of the 100 races, the human race would suffer even more casualties. Sword technique, sky-shattering. In close combat, every move was dangerous. Ningchen moved in a strange way and his sword and saber danced in the air. Each saber was fast and each sword was heavy. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen moves had been exchanged. Luo Jia stood in the sky with golden light shining around him. His fists and palms were shocking and unmoving. This was the most extreme battle between martial kings and peak extreme martial artists. With the help of the Golden Saint technique and Qi Huang's secret technique, the battle was even more powerful than before. BZZ. The black saber slashed across the golden battle armor and a sharp friction sound was heard. Saber marks appeared on the golden battle armor and sparks flew everywhere. At the same time, Luo Jia condensed his saint essence in his palm and a golden brilliance shot out. Boom! In the moment of danger, the ghost sword flew across the sky and blocked the fatal move. Ultimate technique of heaven and earth, saber and sword boundary. Ningchen shouted in a deep voice. His body was covered with a dazzling light. The black saber and the ghost sword turned around. The divine weapons combined and slashed down from the sky. It was a world-shaking move. In the void, wherever the radiance of the sword and saber passed, the heaven and earth split apart. A huge gap appeared, cutting across half of the human world. Seeing this, Luo Jia's face turned serious. He activated his true essence and turned it into Yang Saint Qi. The Milky Way appeared again and its power increased several times. Holy technique, galaxy brilliance. With the support of the Saint Origin, the golden Milky Way appeared in the human world. In the vast star field, the Milky Way stretched across the starry sky. Countless stars flickered, and the golden light was dazzling. The majestic moves showed the unparalleled power of the head of the 12 palaces of the holy region. He was infinitely close to the strongest king realm expert of the imperial Dao. He wasn't any weaker than the strongest kings of the Sky Devil imperial family. In the next moment, between heaven and earth, blades and swords slashed down, colliding with the power of the galaxy. A terrifying explosion occurred, and in the splendor of the galaxy, the blades and swords shattered. Ugh! The aftermath spread out, and Luo Jia let out a heavy groan. More than half of the golden armor on his body shattered, and blood splashed out. On the opposite side, the power of the Milky Way rebounded, and Ningchen took a few steps back. His arms were dyed red, and blood flowed down along the blades and swords. It was difficult to determine the outcome of this fierce battle. Only the blood that fell from the sky told of the tragedy of this battle. Holy technique, golden light illusion. Heavily injured, Luo Jia's fighting spirit soared. He took a step forward, and his Saint Qi burst out again. The golden brilliance spread rapidly, and in an instant, the entire battlefield turned into a world of golden light. Countless stars floated, and it was difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion. In front, Ningchen stood in the golden light illusion and looked around with a solemn expression. Be careful! Behind him, Mu Qingxue reminded in a deep voice. Ningchen nodded. The black saber and ghost sword flew across the sky. The saber hummed, and the sword moved. One saber and one sword broke through thousands of stars. The stars changed, and it was hard to tell whether they were real or fake. In the saber and sword, they shattered one after another, but in an instant, they condensed again. The saber and sword shook the stars. At the same time, Luo Jia's figure swept over, and he condensed his Yuan Qi and slammed it out. Hong! With the power of the palm, the ghost sword met the attack. A violent collision sounded, and Ningchen, who didn't have enough power, felt his right arm go numb, and he took a few steps back. At this moment, several golden stars around him flew quickly. Cracks appeared on the stars, and dazzling golden light bloomed. In an instant they exploded. The power of the star explosion was shocking. At the center of the explosion, golden waves swallowed the heaven and earth, and swallowed the knowing destiny physique. Knowing destiny. Only the heavenly demon clan, who represented the sorcerer clan in the north, attacked unstoppably. In a few days they conquered more than half of the Luogia starfield. In the crepe myrtle divine realm, the master of the divine realm stood on top of the mountain and looked at the human world in the distance. Thank you. Old friend, you're welcome. In the unknown realm, the cyan-clothed fortune teller stood in the human world with a long staff in his hand and said, however, even if the human race can block this time, they may not be able to block a second time. Moreover, we'll definitely cause a lot of criticism by giving up the Luogia starfield. There are bound to be sacrifices in order to achieve great things. This is unavoidable. In the immortal realm, the master of the immortal realm looked at the human world and said coldly. In the human world, the cyan-clothed fortune teller sighed softly and didn't refute. The human race's strength was still far from the primordial demon realm, and it was impossible for them to block the attacks of the 100 races at the same time, especially when there was the terrifying heavenly demon imperial clan among them. This was the reality. Although they had no choice, they had to give up a part of the human race. The result of the battle had been decided. Now, it was up to the young people of the netherworld to protect the Buddha kingdom. In the Buddha kingdom, above the void, the golden light illusion kept shaking. In the illusion, sword light and sword intent crisscrossed, and the battle was so fierce that it was difficult for people to look away. A black-clothed figure flashed quickly, and his saber and sword both appeared. His amazing martial arts attainment shocked everyone who was watching the battle. Who is that? On the life planets, the sky was upside down, and the powerful figures of the human race projected the battle on every life planet, so that all the human race could witness this amazing battle. Inside the realm, Jiming Marquis of the Great Xia dynasty. At this moment, an old voice echoed on every life planet, answering the question in everyone's heart. In the human world, the cyan-clothed fortune teller said, "Old friend, do you really believe that this man can win? He must win." In the immortal realm, the master of the immortal realm said in a low voice, "The human race needs hope, and he is the hope of the human race." In the battle of the Buddha kingdom, the world was watching. For dragons roared around knowing destiny, and all the spiritual chi went into his body to strengthen his saber and sword. This battle was about the confidence of the human race, and he couldn't lose. Ning Chen's body was shining like the cold moon. On the opposite side, Luo Jia also used all his techniques, and the golden light was shining like the sun. As they clashed again and again, the stars in the golden light illusion crumbled one after another. Cracks appeared on the black saber that had withstood countless attacks. Even though it was a peerless divine weapon, it was gradually reaching its limit in this intense battle. Ning Chen felt it, and demonic chi surged in his eyes. He stopped avoiding the enemy's attack, and his demonic chi shot up into the sky, and the demonic fire rose. He used the 9 underworlds battle technique again. Last move, to your glorious life. The two different forces clashed, and suddenly, the golden light illusion shook violently, and the light of the saber and sword rushed into the sky, dazzling everyone. Saber and sword together, limitless ultimate Tao. The last move broke through the limit, and the 9 underworlds battle technique burst out with dazzling light, and the most powerful attack 10 times stronger appeared. The light of the saber and sword rushed into the sky, and the battle about the confidence of the human race finally came to an end. Come on! Sacred spell. Extreme of the universe. The last move was coming, and Luo Jia's eyes also shone with endless battle intent. He moved the stars with his hands, and the vast power of the universe suddenly burst out. The last move collided, and the golden light small world exploded in front of the world's eyes. The horrifying shock wave spread quickly and instantly engulfed the entire battlefield. Chapter 1261. In the Buddhist kingdom, the world's most anticipated battle had finally come to an end. The collision of the two extremes caused a terrifying explosion, turning the world into chaos. The terrifying shockwave spread out, shattering the void. Those who could not avoid it in time were all swept into the void and disappeared. It was a shocking scene. Above the battlefield, Mu Qianshang, Lin Yuzhen, and the others who had avoided the shockwave first looked at the terrifying scene below. Their hearts were in turmoil, unable to suppress their shock. After the extreme, the shockwave dissipated in the void. A figure fell from the sky and smashed into the ground with a bang. A faint golden light scattered from the loser's body. His saint qi dissipated, returning to darkness. In front, the victor stood proudly. Suddenly, a waterfall of blood burst out, dyeing the sky red. Luo Jia. Knowing destiny. At this moment, outside the battlefield, the kings of the underworld and the sanctuary rushed to the sides of the two. Bang! In the void, in Ning Chen's hand, the dark blade wild bone shattered. In the final impact, it exhausted all its spirit qi and completely dissipated. Luo Jia. Below, the lord of the 12th palace helped the severely injured Luo Jia up and said anxiously, "I'm fine." Luo Jia sat up and looked at the young man in the sky. He said in a deep voice, "You won. You let me win." In the sky, Ning Chen waved his hand and put away the ghost sword in his hand. He said lightly, "Sir, please retreat." Luo Jia staggered to his feet and looked back at the sanctuary army that had suffered heavy casualties. His eyes flashed with emotion. Without hesitation, he ordered, "Retreat." With that, the battle ended. The sanctuary army retreated one after another, leaving the Buddhist kingdom. In front of the lords of the 8th and 12th palaces, Luo Jia glanced at the young man in the void and said, "The next time we meet, it will be the time of life and death. I'll be waiting." Ning Chen said calmly. Luo Jia turned around and did not stay any longer. He leaped and left. Behind him, the lords of the 8th and 12th palaces followed. Not long after, they disappeared into the starry sky. The sanctuary army retreated. In the void, Ning Chen's figure suddenly staggered. He vomited a mouthful of blood and almost fell. Beside him, Mu Qingxue immediately went forward to support him. He said with a heavy gaze, "How are you?" "It's fine." Ning Chen barely managed to stabilize himself, his expression extremely tired as he said, "King Aaron, you stay behind to deal with the Buddhist kingdom. Luo Xingchen, Mu Qianshang, King Qi, you guys stay behind as well, in case the Sacred Saint Army returns." The 4 Yamakings of the underworld acknowledged the order in solemn voices. "Cheng Shui, let's go." After settling the matters of the Buddhist nation, Ning Chen looked at the woman beside him and said weakly, "Yes." Mu Qingxue nodded and supported the former. His figure flashed and turned into a beam of white light, disappearing into the distance. "There seems to be something wrong with the knowing destiny state," Luo Xingchen said seriously. "After such a tragic battle, Ji Ming's injuries are definitely not light. However, with Mu Qingxue by his side, there shouldn't be much of a problem." Mu Qianshang replied. Luo Xingchen nodded, but he still looked worried. In the previous battle, the difference between the knowing destiny state and Luo Jia's cultivation was not small. The saint and the devil were opposites, so the suppression would be even more obvious. Knowing destiny was able to turn the tables at the last moment and defeat Luo Jia head-on. He must have paid a high price. In the starry sky, a white beam of light flashed past. It was getting faster and faster, and people couldn't even see its shadow. In the white beam of light, Mu Qingxue supported Ning Chen and moved forward quickly, not daring to stop for even a moment. In the battle that was watched by the whole world, the knowing destiny state, whose cultivation was at an absolute disadvantage, defeated the strongest cultivator of the 12 palaces of the holy region. This shocking battle made the human race see hope again. The 100 clans were not invincible. Their strongest cultivator of the king realm was still defeated by the human race. Hope, an indescribable thing, silently sprouted in the hearts of thousands of human cultivators, giving them hope and faith again. Just when the human race of the major galaxies were still excited about this amazing battle, above the starry sky, the demonic qi was surging. Many figures flashed past. The celestial devil royal family had sent out their top forces to stop and kill the severely injured knowing destiny state. In the immortal state, the space fluctuated. Peacock came out and led the immortal state cultivators away quickly. At the same time, in the underworld, Xia Zi, the Morning Moon Tower Master, Luo Fei, and Sam all went out to help Knowing Destiny State. In the battle of time, all sides moved together. Everyone had only one goal, Marquis Knowing Destiny State. In the starry sky, Ning Chen looked extremely weak and said, "Change direction. We can't go back to the underworld yet." Mu Qingxue supported Ning Chen and asked as they hurried. "If we go back to the underworld now, the pursuers will also be there. We can't go back rashly," Ning Chen said tiredly. "Then where should we go?" Mu Qingxue asked seriously. "Immortal state," Ning Chen said weakly. "Okay." Mu Qingxue answered and changed direction, flying toward the immortal state according to Ning Chen's guidance. Behind them, the demonic clouds were rapidly approaching. Within the demonic clouds, a gigantic python appeared. Its terrifying demonic aura shook the hearts of everyone present. Maharaja of the Eight showed up. The ancient monster king with infinite strength reappeared in the world after hundreds of thousands of years. Beside Maharaja, Garuda with wings on his back stood quietly. His powerful demonic chi was also extremely shocking. The two fastest members of the group of 8 carried out the order and chased after the Knowing Destiny State. Behind them, hundreds of great demons with giant wings followed. They galloped away at an extremely fast speed. "How far are we?" Maharaja asked. His voice was deafening like thunder, echoing in the starry sky and reaching hundreds of miles away. "Soon." Garuda glanced at the flying demon fire demon moths and said, "The 13th prince was severely injured and couldn't hide his energy anymore. As long as he wasn't too far away, those moths would definitely find him." It was a race for time. The demons, the underworld and the immortal state were all searching for Knowing Destiny State. They didn't dare to waste any time. A white light flashed across the sky and disappeared into the starry sky in an instant. "Hang in there. We'll be there soon." Seeing the man beside him become weaker and weaker, Mu Qingshue's eyes flashed with worry. "Okay." After losing half of his chi, Ning Chen's consciousness couldn't hold on any longer. He leaned on Mu Qingxue and answered dizzily. The after-effects of using the flying swan art were starting to show. Even the heavenly demon body couldn't withstand burning his chi. Seeing this, Mu Qingxue became more worried. Something's not right. Why did he lose so much chi? After traveling for a long time, the immortal state wasn't too far away. However, the pursuers were getting closer and closer. With a heavy burden on his body, Mu Qingshue's speed was restricted. He couldn't get rid of the pursuers for a while. Thousands of miles away, in the demonic clouds, Garuda looked at the white light flashing in front of him and smiled coldly. They finally caught up. "Kill!" With an order, hundreds of demons with giant wings immediately rushed out. Their strong killing intent covered the stars in the sky. In front, Mu Qingxue sensed it. He looked back and saw the hundreds of demons rushing over with a cold expression. "Lend me your sword. This time I'll take you out of here." While speaking, Mu Qingxue took the sword from the former's hand. His killing intent was cold and bone-chilling. Chapter 1262. In the Ziwei Star Zone, the demonic army was pressing down. On the road of life and death, the 8 demonic tribes chased after them. With an order, hundreds of demons rushed out, their murderous aura covering the sky. The demonic army blocked the way in all directions, sealing off all paths of survival. There were hundreds of black-winged demons above the 4th level. The most powerful one was close to the king realm. With hundreds of demons attacking together, a terrifying demonic aura swept out, shocking everyone. They were heavily surrounded, and there was no chance of survival. Coldness flashed in Mu Qingshue's eyes. He held a ghost artifact and his true essence surged. The forbidden technique, Taishang Indifference, reappeared after countless years. The forbidden technique appeared. With Mu Qingxue as the center, endless cold chi spread out in all directions. White frost filled the sky, drifting silently. In an instant, a great battle began. The white figure rushed out, and the ghost sword pierced through the air. Frost filled the sky. the extremely fast sword and the extremely fast shadow. Even the black-winged demons, who were known for their speed, could not reach them. Wherever the ghost sword passed, blood dyed the 9 heavens red. The king of hell retracted his blade, and the impermanents took lives. The beautiful white figure fought for life with the ghost sword in hand. Whoosh! The sword slashed down, and the wings of a black-winged demon were directly cut off. Blood splattered all over the sky like rain. The untouchable sword was fast, so fast that it was shocking. The woman's eyes were soul-shaking, so cold that it chilled people's hearts. There was no way out. There was only death. Sword after sword, cold and emotionless. In the encirclement of hundreds of demons, the beautiful figure in white flashed, and the impermanents took lives. Outside the battle, Maharaja looked at the battle ahead. Strong murderous intent flashed in its cold snake eyes. After a few breaths, it opened its giant mouth, and a ball of black light burst out, breaking through the sky. In the battle, Mu Qingxue sensed it. He stepped in the air, and his figure flashed, avoiding the killing intent. Boom! The black light pierced through a black-winged demon. Blood and bones exploded, scattering in the starry sky. The shocking scene shocked hundreds of demons. Seeing this, Maharaja's eyes became even colder. Demonic chi surged around him, and he appeared. A muscular man in black walked out. His expression was sinister, and his muscles bulged as if he had the power to fight the heavens. Garuda, aren't you going to attack? Maharaja glanced at a nearby cultivator and said in a deep voice, "You just woke up not long ago. I'll leave this human woman for you to stretch your muscles," Garuda said lightly. "Thank you so much," Maharaja replied coldly. He took a step forward, and his demonic chi surged as he shot forward. With a loud boom, a heavy punch landed. In that moment of crisis, Mu Qingxue turned around and waved his sword, facing the attack head-on. A violent tremor resounded as a huge force came. Mu Qingxue was pushed back a few steps. Blood spurted out from her slender hand, dyeing her white robe red. So this is the expert of the human race? Ha, women are indeed women, unable to withstand a single blow. Maharaja let out a hearty laugh, and his figure flashed out, once again pressing forward. A Fey monarch with innate divine strength could not be defeated with brute force. With a punch, the entire starry sky trembled violently. Mu Qingxue's eyes turned cold. With a turn of his feet, his figure instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was behind Maharaja. A sword tore through the air, aiming to take his life. It was filled with cold killing intent, and it froze the frosty sky. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of collision rang out. The sword stabbed into Maharaja's back, but it was blocked by his tough skin, unable to advance even an inch. Formless sword. Facing this familiar situation, Mu Qingxue's expression did not change. The sword in his hand spun rapidly, forcibly breaking through the Fey's defense. Ha! With a soft shout, Mu Qingxue's slender hand gathered essence, and his palm struck the sword hilt. With a whoosh, the ghost sword stabbed into the Fey's body. Blood spurted out in a dazzling scarlet color. Scram! Feeling intense pain, Maharaja roared angrily. His tiger body trembled, and his Fey energy surged out. Behind him, Mu Qingxue pulled out his sword and retreated, avoiding the Fey energy attack. In the blink of an eye, round after round of intense attacks and defenses occurred. The 100 great demons encircled Mu Qingxue again, waving their spears and roaring. Mu Qingxue's eyes narrowed. The ghost sword in his hand slashed through the army. The sword light was cold, bringing out another scarlet waterfall. Outside the battle, seeing that the encirclement was unlikely to succeed, Garuda's expression sank. He clenched his right hand, and the Fey halberd materialized, entering the battle. Boom! The sword and halberd clashed, and the world turned upside down. With the addition of Fey energy, Mu Qingxue's slender hand was dyed scarlet again. However, his cold eyes did not change at all. He stepped forward and leaped up. In an instant, sword chi broke through the sky. Thousands of sword lights gathered behind Mu Qingxue, forming a pair of huge sword wings. It was a shocking scene. In the battle, Maharaga and Garuda's expressions both froze. Suddenly, they saw a white light flash before their eyes. Before they could react, the white-clothed figure had already arrived. Fast, so fast that it was hard to react. The ghost's sword streaked across the sky, and the sword that sealed the throats of the two Fey kings wanted to kill them. At the moment of life and death, Garuda and Maharaga instinctively took half a step back, avoiding the fatal sword. Blood flowed silently from their throats. The two Fey kings barely managed to survive. When they looked at each other, it was difficult to suppress the fear in their eyes. Under the absolute suppression of their cultivation, the two kings of the monster race had almost died at the same time. An intense sense of fear and humiliation assaulted them, and their eyes flashed with intense madness. "You're asking for death!" Garuda and Maharaga roared angrily at the same time. They rushed out, one on the left and one on the right, attacking together. The two Fey kings attacked with Fey Qi. Mu Qingshue's figure was as fast as lightning, suppressing the two with extreme speed. The battle was unusually fierce. Around the battle, hundreds of demons blocked off the escape route, leaving no gaps in the battle. Behind Mu Qingxue, knowing Destiny's consciousness was already on the verge of death. His cultivation was exhausted, and most of his blood qi had dissipated. Even with the body of a heavenly demon, it was difficult for him to hold on. Kill! Not allowing the two to escape, the two Fey kings attacked fiercely. They were determined to kill the two top human masters here. Knowing Destiny's lifeless eyes could no longer see the red of blood. He only trusted the woman in front of him. It was as if he had entrusted his life to her when he first entered the palace and met her for the first time. The familiar temperature behind him was so nostalgic. Mu Qingxue clenched the sword in his hand. Blood dripped from his right arm, but he did not waver. She wanted to take him away, leave alive. The fate they had unintentionally carved back then seemed to be a trick of fate. They missed each other again and again, but met each other again and again. Almost half of the hundreds of demons on the Path of Stars were killed, and the two Fey kings were also heavily injured. Even the two peerless demons could not fully defend against the unimaginable speed. Boom! The sword and halberd clashed again. Blood spurted out like a waterfall. The ghost sword fell from Mu Qingshue's hand, but the white silk flew out and wrapped around the hilt, pulling the ghost sword back. His blood-stained right hand could no longer hold the sword of hope. Mu Qingxue clenched his teeth and tore open the white silk, wrapping the ghost sword around his hand. The unyielding woman of the barren city was as proud as any man. "You don't know what's good for you." Garuda and Maharaga snorted coldly. Their halberd drew wind and thunder, and their fists shook the world. They were so powerful that the stars in the sky lost their color. Mu Qingxue stepped forward, and his figure disappeared instantly. He arrived in front of Maharaga, and the ghost's sword went for his throat. Maharaga raised his hand and blocked the ghost sword. The moment the sword was blocked, Garuda's attack came from behind. The halberd could shatter stars. Changing hands of the world. With the ghost sword restrained, Mu Qingshue's sword turned around and slashed back, trying to sever the Fey King's hands. Maharaga frowned and released his hands, retreating from the battle. In an instant, Mu Qingshue's figure flashed out, avoiding the killing move from behind. His attacks did not stop, and his sword continued to kill the Fey King in front of him. His swift sword blocked one of the two swords. In an instant, Maharaga's body was dyed red again. Garuda's halberd came forward again from behind, and a majestic attack came, trying to resolve the danger of his fellow cultivator. Sensing the danger behind him, Mu Qingshue's figure disappeared again. He cut down a demon with a sword and broke out of the encirclement. The change in the battle was so sudden that by the time Maharaga and Garuda reacted, the three demons had already been beheaded. In that instant, Mu Qingshuo flashed out and disappeared. Chase! Not allowing the two to escape, Garuda ordered. The wings on his back flapped, and he chased after them. Behind him, Maharaga and the remaining 50 or so black-winged demons quickly followed. One black light after another streaked across the starry sky, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. It was a battle of life and death. In the starry sky, the white-clothed lady of Desolate City turned into lightning, moving so fast that it was difficult to follow. Behind Mu Qingxue, Ning Chen gradually regained a bit of consciousness. He said softly, "Let it go." "I can't let it go," Mu Qingxue replied. He looked at the starry sky in front of him and sped off. 100 years ago, 100 years later, Ning Chen whispered a few words in the woman's ear. They were so weak that it was difficult to hear them clearly. Mu Qingxue's expression darkened. He did not say a word and sped off. The lady of Desolate City was unwilling to let go of such a heavy burden. 100 years ago, for Desolate City, she chose to forget everything. 100 years later, for him, she was willing to give up everything. She did not know where her feelings came from, but she loved him deeply. Behind them, the pursuers were getting closer and closer, like the god of death descending again. The deity realm in front of them was not far away, but now it seemed so far away. "Have you ever regretted it?" Mu Qingxue looked ahead and asked for the first time. "I don't regret it," Ning Chen whispered on his deathbed. "That's enough." Mu Qingxue turned around and looked at the pursuers behind him. Then he slowly closed his eyes. If there came a day when she no longer knew him, he hoped that she could still remember this feeling. In the next moment, an earth-shattering shout resounded in the starry sky. Cold light shone brightly around Mu Qingxue. An extremely terrifying energy soared into the sky, shocking the 9 heavens and the 10,000 deities. Mu Qingxue, who had released all his forbidden energy, opened all the seals in his body. He threw away his past and gave up everything, gathering all his energy for the first time. Boom! Wind and thunder roared in the 9 heavens, and dark clouds rolled. This shocking scene shocked the world. Garuda and Maharaga, who were chasing after Mu Qingxue, saw this shocking scene. Their bodies shook, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Under the tribulation clouds, the white-clothed, white-haired woman's eyes were as cold as ice. There was no longer any trace of human emotion. Fate rises and falls, fate ends and fate ends. 100 years of a dream, like black silk in the morning, like snow in the evening. Chapter 1263. In the Ziwei star zone, 10,000 bolts of lightning descended upon the mortal realm. Under the 10,000 lightning tribulations, a white-haired and white-clothed figure stood still. Forbidden energy rose from her body, and all the spells dispersed. The imperial might was faintly discernible and heavy. She had abandoned everything and entered the Tao with half her body. The white-haired woman raised her hand, and the entire starry sky shook violently. 5 senses, deprive. Her calm voice was ethereal and cold. In front of the woman, Maharaga's body trembled violently. Blood burst out from his body. His vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch were quickly stripped away, scattering into the starry sky along with his blood. This shocking scene had never been seen before. Martial bones, deprive. After losing the 5 senses, the woman spoke again. Her words carried the law, and a bloody mist exploded around Maharaga once more. All his martial bones shattered and were destroyed. Maharaga opened his mouth in fear, but he could no longer make a sound. As his 5 senses were scattered, he had also completely lost the ability to speak. 7 souls, deprive. The woman in white spoke again, and the world changed. Maharaga's face twisted violently, and the 7 souls in his body silently scattered. The Grim Reaper took another step forward. Not far away, Garuda saw this shocking scene and instinctively took half a step back, fear rising in his heart. 3 souls, deprive. Under the lightning tribulation, the white-haired woman spoke for the 4th time. Impermanence demands life, and the yellow springs seeks guidance. As the Grim Reaper descended, Maharaga turned his head and looked at the distant primordial demon realm. His lifeless eyes flashed with a final reluctance. The next moment, Maharaga's eyes completely lost their luster, and his 3 souls scattered, returning to the world. Boom! His life force dissipated, and the remaining demonic chi in Maharaga's body scattered everywhere. After several breaths, the king of demonic beasts exploded, his flesh and blood flying everywhere. Defeated in ancient times, he had slept for hundreds of thousands of years. When he woke up again, his soul had scattered. Maharaja would not rest until he died. With his fellow cultivator dead, Garuda immediately came to his senses. He flapped his wings and tried to flee. In front of him, the white-haired woman looked over and clenched her hand. Immediately, an indescribable law of the world pressed down from the starry sky, demanding his life. With the threat of death looming over him, Garuda's pupils constricted. Without hesitation, he grabbed a black-winged demonic beast and used it to block him. Boom! Under the pressure of the worldly laws, the black-winged great demon exploded in front of Garuda. Blood and bones filled the sky, dyeing the starry sky red. "All of you, stop her!" Garuda shouted in horror and ordered, his fear blazing. In the surroundings, the remaining 50 great demons exchanged glances with one another. The fear in their eyes was equally intense. "Could it be that you want to disobey my orders?" Garuda's expression darkened as he roared. With the king's order in front of them, the 50 great demons didn't dare to hesitate. They suppressed the fear in their hearts and rushed forward. Under the tribulation clouds, a cold light flashed in the white-haired woman's eyes. She took a step forward, and her figure was as fast as lightning. Whoosh! The ghost sword slashed out, and severed limbs flew all over the sky. The invincible divine weapon mercilessly reaped lives with each slash. In just a few breaths of time, the 50 great demons had all died in battle. Their corpses floated in the starry space, and not a single one was intact. Up ahead, Garuda had already left at some point, completely vanishing into the depths of the starry sky. Under the tribulation clouds, the white-haired woman didn't chase after him. She turned around and looked at the unconscious black-robed young man behind her. She stepped forward with a hint of confusion in her eyes. At this moment, many figures rushed over from afar. The leader was a young lady. She was sitting in a wheelchair, and her body was surrounded by a 5-colored divine light. She had an extraordinary aura that attracted the attention of others. The immortal state warriors arrived and stopped 100 steps away. Mu Qingxue. Looking at the white-haired woman in white, Peacock was shocked. What happened? In front of her, there were corpses floating in the sky, and severed limbs were everywhere. It was a shocking sight. 100 steps away, Mu Qingxue squinted his eyes when he saw the unfamiliar experts rushing over. The ghost sword flashed, and after a while, it gradually withdrew. He put down the ghost sword and placed it beside the black-robed man. Mu Qingxue looked at the former one last time, and without saying anything, he took a step forward and left. In front of the immortal state warriors, Peacock looked at the woman in front of her with a solemn expression. What she was most worried about had happened. From today onwards, Mu Qingxue had truly become the legendary Grand Supreme. He had become someone more terrifying than a demon. In front of her, the unconscious knowing destiny floated in the sky. Beside him, the ghost sword vibrated and was covered in demon blood. "Take him back," Peacock ordered. "Yes." Behind her, an immortal state warrior took the order and came to knowing destiny's side. He checked the latter's injuries and helped him up. Soon, the immortal state warriors left and disappeared in a few breaths. In the immortal state, there were thousands of floating islands. Among the islands, there was a mountain that reached into the clouds. On the mountain, the master of the immortal state stood quietly. His compassionate eyes were filled with indescribable coldness. "Master!" The peacock returned with the severely injured knowing destiny and bowed respectfully to Yi Fuyin. In front of the mountain, the elder turned around and looked at the unconscious black-robed young man in front of Peacock. He asked calmly, "How is he?" "He has used up all his energy and blood. He needs to rest for a while," Peacock said seriously. The elder stepped forward and reached out his withered right hand. Golden light filled the air and went into Knowing Destiny's body. Knowing Destiny's body gradually recovered as the imperial chi entered his body. The fiend essence flowed and healed his severely injured body silently. In front of him, Peacock looked at the recovering body quietly and said, "Master, Mu Qingxue has become the Grand Supreme of this era." Hearing this, the elder's right hand paused. He looked at the disciple in front of him and asked, "She unlocked all the forbidden essence?" Peacock nodded and said, "When I arrived, all the pursuers of the heavenly demons were dead. Mu Qingxue had forgotten everything, just like the legendary Grand Supreme." Heaven's will. The elder heaved a sigh. Was knowing destiny Marquis and Mu Qingxue not fated? Take him to rest. Also, send someone to the underworld to inform them. After thinking for a while, the elder calmed himself down and said calmly. Peacock bowed respectfully and left with the unconscious knowing destiny. Not long after Peacock left, the head of the Dark Shadow Seven Kings, Yin, appeared on the peak and half knelt. "Region Master, how's the situation in the All-Heaven Starfield?" asked the elder. "Region Master, after Luo Jia's defeat, the morale of the Western Sacred Domain's army is low and they have temporarily stopped their invasion," replied Yin. The elder nodded and said, "Go and invite someone to the immortal realm." Asked Yin. "The pavilion master of the number 1 pavilion, Yi Tianxing," said the elder calmly. "Yes." Yin accepted the order and left. From the beginning to the end, she did not ask a single question. In the primal demon realm, the heavenly demon ancestral land, demonic aura surged. In the sky, the Grand Supreme was fighting. It was a shocking scene. The Grand Supreme, who had disappeared for countless years, had reappeared. Every move he made was filled with destructive power. In front of the sky, the 2 demon royalty, First Kunyi and 7 luminaries, looked at the shocking battle with gloomy expressions. "I never thought that the Grand Supreme would reappear," said the First Kunyi Demon Emperor coldly. "Judging from her cultivation, she shouldn't have reached the sovereign level yet. There's no need to worry about her. Even if she really did reach the sovereign level with Royal Brother here, there's nothing to fear," said the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. "Wrong," said the First Kunyi Demon Emperor. "The Grand Supreme's battle prowess is at least on the level of an immortal lord. She might even be comparable to an immortal emperor. I can't do anything to her alone." The 7 luminaries Demon Emperor frowned and said, "With the current laws of the world, it's very difficult for an ancient immortal lord to appear again. It's not easy for the Grand Supreme to reach the sovereign level. Royal Brother, you don't have to worry too much." The First Kunyi Demon Emperor nodded. He could not hide the seriousness in his eyes. He hoped so. There were too many unconventional experts in the human race. For example, the master of the Eastern Immortal Realm and the swordsman guarding the trial. Just as the winds and clouds in the outer sky kept changing, a beautiful figure in a white dress flashed across the distant starry sky. She was so fast that she surpassed the limits of time and space. In the blink of an eye, she was already 10 million miles away. The memory from a distant era drove the current Grand Supreme to fly into the depths of the starry sky. In the white light, the white-haired woman was extremely beautiful, but she was so cold that no one dared to look at her directly. Time flew. Behind Mu Qingxue, 1 star region after another gradually disappeared. He had already traveled tens of thousands of miles. An extremely ancient planet with life appeared in front of him. Mu Qingxue stopped. A moment later, he flashed and flew toward the planet. There were ruins everywhere on the planet. The once glorious planet with life had become a dead planet. No traces of humans could be seen. Walking among the ruins, Mu Qingxue's eyes became more and more confused. It was like a memory from the ancient era. It was distant and hazy, making it difficult for him to see clearly. After walking for half a day, Mu Qingxue walked past countless broken cities, mountains, and rivers. When the sun set, he stopped in front of an ancient altar. On the altar, there was a dusty ancient sword. The body of the sword was rusty and covered in dust and weeds. After looking at it for a while, Mu Qingxue stepped forward and wiped off the dust and weeds on the sword. Suddenly, the sword vibrated slightly. It was weak but very clear. With the return of its master, the ancient sword hummed softly. The rust on the sword began to fall off. After a few breaths, the sword shone brightly. An ancient sword reappeared in the world. The sword was transparent and as thin as a cicada's wing. It was almost invisible. Mu Qingxue held the sword. Above the altar, wind and thunder roared. It was a shocking phenomenon. At this moment, ghostly chi filled the void. 3 dragon corpses flew out, pulling a palanquin. The immortal corpses patrolled and appeared in the world at the same time. Grand Supreme. In the palanquin, a woman with a red veil on her face opened her red lips. Her murderous intent surged, chilling to the bone. Yama, king of the underworld. Below, Mu Qingxue also sensed the ghostly chi in the sky. He looked over and said coldly, "Today they met again." Their murderous intents appeared at the same time. A battle beyond the king realm was about to break out. Yama, king. In the palanquin, the woman stood up and walked out. She clenched her right hand and purple divine light shone brightly. The divine weapon of the underworld, Yama king, reappeared. Endless sword pressure swept across the world. Chapter 1264. Crepe Myrtle Godly Realm. At the center of thousands of floating islands, there was a mountain that reached into the clouds. It was majestic and magnificent. On this day, a black-clothed man walked over from the peak. His face looked extremely young, but there was a rich aura of age in his eyes. Night Master, Yi Tianxing, the strongest leader of the humans in the primordial demon realm. Today, he met the master of the godly realm for the first time. "I am Yi Tianxing. Greetings to the master of the godly realm." 10 steps away from the mountain, Night Master stopped and looked at the elder in front of him. He bowed politely. In front of the mountain, the elder turned around and looked at the master of the number 1 pavilion in front of him. He said calmly, "You don't have to be so courteous. Please forgive me for inviting you here. You are too kind. I have wanted to visit you for a long time. I am lucky to be invited by you," Night Master said with a smile. After some small talk, the two went straight to the main topic. They were going to discuss the human race's fight against the 100 races. The exchange of information was very detailed, especially the characteristics of the royal and royal families. It was the main point of the two leaders' discussion. After a long discussion, Night Master looked around the floating islands and asked, "I heard that Jiming Marquis is also in the godly realm. Why don't I see him?" "Jiming Marquis is injured and is recuperating. If you want to see him, I can send someone to bring you there," the elder said calmly. "Thank you." Night Master bowed and said politely, "You are welcome." The elder replied calmly and said, "Peacock, you lead the way for the master." Behind him, the 5-colored light gathered and Peacock appeared. She bowed respectfully. Not far from the peak, on a small but very quiet floating island, a beautiful woman in green clothes was busying herself. The hair on her forehead was wet with sweat, making her look even more beautiful. "Miss Qing." Peacock bowed politely and said, "This is the master of the number 1 pavilion. He is here to visit Jiming Marquis." Qing Ning heard and looked at the man behind Peacock. She smiled and said, "Night Master, I heard Ning Chen mention you. Please come in." "Thank you." A strange expression flashed across the Night Master's eyes when he saw the quiet and peaceful lady in front of him. He politely replied and immediately walked towards the wooden house in front of him. Inside the wooden house, the black-clothed, black-haired man was quietly leaning against the headboard of the bed, deep in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. "Ning Chen, the Night Lord has come to see you," Qing Ning said as she walked into the room and looked at the man on the bed. At the head of the bed, Ning Chen came back to his senses. He shifted his gaze and saw the familiar figure behind Qing Ning. He did not look too surprised. He knew very well that the number 1 pavilion under the heavens would appear sooner or later, and the humans of the primordial demon realm would eventually return to the heavens beyond heaven. "Jiming Marquis, we meet again." The Night Patriarch looked at the young man in front of him and smiled. Ning Chen nodded and said softly, "It's been many years since we last met, but Night Lord's elegance is still the same. Please sit." "Thank you." The Night Lord didn't stand on ceremony either. He walked to the wooden chair beside the table and sat down. In the previous battle, the Marquis of Jiming defeated the strongest palace lord of the Western Sacred Domain. "You've really won a lot of face for the human race." "I just did what I should do." Next, we still need to rely on the Pavilion Lord and the Purple Myrtle Divine Realm to fight against the 100 races, Ningchen said calmly. The number 1 pavilion is duty-bound to help the human race. The Jiming Marquis should also recover from his injuries as soon as possible. The human experts who appeared with the Jiming Marquis earlier still need your leadership, the Night Lord said seriously. At the side, Qing Ning walked over with a cup of tea and served it to the former. Then she quietly retreated. The Night Lord looked back and asked, "Who is this girl?" "Qing Ning, the elder sister of the family," Ning Chen replied. "So the Jiming Marquis has an elder sister with such amazing cultivation," the Night Lord praised. It was not easy for a woman to practice martial arts, and very few of them had reached the King realm. The woman just now had restrained her cultivation and seemed to be aloof from worldly affairs, but he could clearly feel that this elder sister of the Jiming Marquis was an out-and-out King realm expert. "You flatter me," Ningchen replied calmly and didn't say much on this topic. He changed the topic and said, "The number 1 pavilion under the heavens has contributed a lot to stop the invasion of the 100 races. How are the losses?" "It's still within the acceptable range." The Night Lord's expression hardened as he said, "During the battle between our pavilion and the God's capital mountain, we discovered that there were many kings in the God's capital army that we had never seen before. If the ancient Saint Sky hadn't come to our rescue at the critical moment, the other 3 kings of the profound realm would have suffered a great loss." "Is that so?" Hearing this, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. When he had provoked the 4 sovereign families to fight against the Sky Devil Imperial family, he thought that the 4 sovereign families had used all their trump cards. He didn't expect that there were still hidden forces in the divine capital mountain. So, the Jiming Marquis and the Immortal Realm experts must be careful when facing the other sovereign families, the Night Lord reminded seriously. "Thank you for your reminder," Ning Chen replied seriously. While the two were talking, outside the wooden house, Peacock looked at the busy woman beside her. After a while, she said calmly, "Miss Qing, how long have you known the Jiming Marquis?" Qing Ning stopped what she was doing and thought for a while. Then she said, "More than 100 years. I can't remember exactly how long. When I first met him, he was not even 17. At that time, he was much more cheerful than he is now." While speaking, a trace of nostalgia flashed across Qing Ning's face. Time was merciless. So many years had passed unknowingly. The young man back then had completely changed after thousands of hardships. Peacock listened to the former quietly and sighed. For more than 100 years, the woman in front of her had stayed by the Jiming Marquis side without complaint. What kind of relationship was that? Love or kinship? Why did she feel that these descriptions were so shallow? No matter what kind of relationship it was impossible to not ask for anything in return. Love, hate, all kinds of things in life seemed to be unimportant to the woman in front of her. What's wrong? Seeing the Immortal Realm Saintess's strange look, Qing Ning smiled and said, "Is there something wrong?" Peacock came back to her senses and sighed. What happened to Mu Qingxue may be a big blow to the Jiming Marquis. "Miss Qing, if you have the chance, please persuade him." Qing Ning nodded and said, "Miss Peacock, you are very considerate. Ning Chen's heart is much stronger than ours. Moreover, he doesn't have so much energy to be sad now, right?" Peacock frowned and looked at the Jiming Marquis who was talking happily with the Night Lord. She sighed in her heart. Sometimes she felt that the Jiming Marquis was no different from a monster. When he was emotionless, he was more like a demon than a demon. If it was anyone else, it would be impossible to be so calm when the woman he loved forgot about him, as if nothing had happened. Even if it was a demon. Just as the Night Lord came to visit the Immortal Realm, at the end of the starry sky, on an ancient planet, the Yama King and the current Taishang of the underworld met by accident. The Yama King was unsheathed and the Emperor's aura swept across the 9 heavens. In front of the altar, Mu Qingxue's face turned cold. The Taishang divine sword shone with a cold light. The 2 strongest swords in the world surpassed the Emperor weapons and their sharpness shocked the sky. An unexpected scene and an unavoidable battle. The Taishang and Yama King's divine weapons shone brightly and their Emperor's aura shocked the world. With a furious roar, the battle began. The Yama King moved in the void and his ghost chi was majestic. His sword opened a path to hell. Below, Mu Qingxue focused and stepped forward. His divine sword broke through the void and clashed with the Yama King. With a boom, the divine weapons clashed. The sky was filled with sword chi and the planet below suddenly shook violently. The mountains moved and the earth moved. Earth fire spewed out. Bang! The divine swords crossed and each move was merciless. Palm essence condensed and clashed head-on. In a short distance, the fierce battle broke out. Both of them had extreme negative origin and each move was destructive. The shocking battle was beyond the limit of time. As if the ancient times had come again, the two peerless powerhouses of the immortal realm clashed again. Forbidden essence and ghost force clashed. Why did they hate each other so much? Their memories were gone and only the instincts of their bodies were left. The two peerless beauties waved the divine weapons in their hands. Every move was to kill, mercilessly taking lives. The appearance of 100 ghosts stirred up thousands of waves, pushing the white-haired woman back. The Yama King of the underworld gathered his essence and ghost force rolled, covering the sky. 10 steps away, Mu Qingxue stopped. His white hair danced in the wind. Thousands of sword lights gathered and formed a pair of huge sword wings. Extreme moves appeared, overturning the heavens and overturning the earth. The two figures flew out, their extreme powers colliding. The two opposite forces, one black and one white, clashed. The aftershocks shook the world and the surrounding world collapsed quickly. Below, the planet that suffered the aftershocks of the two's battle started to collapse. Earth fire spewed out and filled the sky, showing signs of doomsday. Royal Jyoga, 100 dead souls buried. When the battle reached its climax, the Yama King of the underworld opened his mouth and ghost chi rushed into the sky. In an instant, a huge undead giant statue appeared in the sky and roared. The sky changed color. The resentment of all living beings gathered crazily. The Yama King of the underworld showed a power that was beyond the limit of a martial artist. He controlled the power of the world of death and gathered it on the divine weapon Yama. He slashed down and destroyed the starry sky. Boom! The sword chi destroyed the world. Wherever the sword chi passed, the world was shattered. The primitive planet that had existed for countless years collapsed. A huge crack appeared and spread across the entire planet. Below, Mu Qingxue focused and shouted. The forbidden energy around him rose and a silver-white light shot into the sky. The Taishang indifference appeared again, shocking the world. The resentment of the world and the Taishang forbidden energy clashed. A horrifying explosion sounded. The entire primitive planet exploded. Rocks flew and stars rained down. In the starry sky, the two peerless beauties looked at each other. Powerful energy surged in their bodies and the coldness in their eyes became brighter. In the cycle of the heavenly Tao, life and death are not interchangeable. Today, the Taishang will sacrifice his life to pay tribute to the millions of living beings in the underworld. As soon as he said that, thousands of dead souls appeared behind the Yama King of the underworld. They were an army with resentment. The strongest Yama King of the underworld summoned an army of 100,000. They gathered their spirits and tried to kill the Taishang. Chapter 1265. The battle between the Yama lords of the underworld and the grand elders of the current generation was getting more and more intense. 100,000 soldiers of the underworld appeared and their resentment shot into the sky. Endless ghost chi covered the stars in the sky. With the support of the resentment, the Emperor's sword in the Yama lord's hand became even more powerful. It was a shocking scene. The power of 100,000 soldiers gathered in the Yama lord's body. The Emperor's sword's light shot into the sky and the entire star region started to shake. Seeing this, Mu Qingxue formed essence with his fingers and pointed his sword at the Emperor's sword. Cold chi spread and frost filled the sky. The grand forbidden scripture appeared and the ultimate martial arts moved the world. The power of absolute love was earth-shattering. Mu Qingxue pointed his sword at the sky and a huge icy river appeared in the sky. It spanned a few 100,000 miles and shocked everyone. The next moment, the sword light slashed down and the river of stars fell from the sky. The grand divine sword slashed down and broke through the sky, slashing at the Yama Lord of the underworld in front. Break! At the same time, the Yama Lord's Emperor sword slashed the sky. It was also an earth-shattering move, clashing with the icy river of stars. Boom! The two sides clashed and starlight filled the sky. The shocking impact destroyed the surrounding stars and turned them into dust in the aftermath of the battle. After the intense impact, two figures appeared in the sky. Ghost Chi and Forbidden Essence swept out, and the battle intent in their eyes became more intense. At this moment, Yin Chi spread hundreds of thousands of miles away from the battle. Tens of thousands of Yin soldiers walked out and rushed toward the depths of the sky. In the battle far away, the Yama Lord sensed something and frowned under his red veil. He waved his hand and put away the Emperor's sword. He stepped forward and returned to the palanquin. In the blink of an eye, the three dragon corpses moved and pulled the palanquin away. In the sky, Mu Qingxue looked at the patrolling immortal corpses, and the murderous intent in his eyes disappeared. He thought for a while and turned to leave. The earth-shattering battle started unexpectedly and ended unexpectedly. The Yama Lord of the Underworld and the current Grand Elder left, leaving only the ancient star region that was full of holes to tell the story of the previous battle. At the divine capital mountain in the primordial demon realm, a divine general of the divine capital returned and reported the situation of the battle in heavens beyond. The world's #1 pavilion. On the peak of the mountain, the lord of the holy capital, Yulu, narrowed his eyes as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. After returning to the heavens beyond skies, this human's legacy no longer bothered to hide his identity. Now, apart from the celestial demonic imperial family, the western sacred region, the scaled race, and the divine capital mountain were all blocked. The strength displayed by the human race was far beyond their expectations. Is the master of the celestial capital also worried about the war at the realm beyond heaven? At this moment, demonic chi surged in the void, and a peerless demonic shadow appeared between heaven and earth. 7 suns lingered around it, shaking heaven and earth. When the 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor showed up at the divine capital mountain, every expert hiding in the divine capital mountain immediately went on alert. 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor, why have you come in person? On the peak of the mountain, Yulu looked at the demon sovereign in front of him and said faintly, I'm here to invite the leader of the holy capital to come with me to the outer sky. The 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor replied. Oh. Yulu frowned slightly and said, it's still too early for a decisive battle. Of course, it's not the time for a decisive battle, but it's necessary to increase the pressure on the human sovereigns, the 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor replied. The human sovereigns' whereabouts are unpredictable. It won't be easy to find them. How are we going to deal with them? Yulu said in a deep voice. Since the war between the two realms, the Shaman Emperor has been trying to deduce the whereabouts of the human sovereigns. Now, we have some clues, the 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor replied. Where are they? Yulu asked sternly. The Ziwei star zone at the realm beyond heaven, the 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor said slowly. Yulu's eyes flickered coldly. He said, since we've found their whereabouts, I don't mind paying them a visit. The 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor grinned when he heard Yulu's permission. His figure dissipated and flew into the sky. In front of the passage between the two realms, mist was floating with colorful lights. 2 peerless sovereigns stood in the air, waiting for the two to arrive. We've been waiting for you for a long time. Let's go, the Lord of the Western Sacred Region said calmly when he saw the two. He then turned around and walked into the spatial passage. Behind him, the Scaled Emperor, the 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor, and the Lord of the Divine Capital walked in one after another and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In front of the passage between the two realms in the Red Phoenix Star Zone at the realm beyond heaven, 4 sovereigns walked out one after another. Their peerless aura shocked the entire mortal realm. The moment the 4 sovereigns appeared in the realm beyond heaven, the Lord of the realm shuddered on the peak surrounded by thousands of floating islands in the Ziwei Divine Realm. His eyes lit up. Not good. At the same time, in front of an ancient city in the mortal realm, the fortune teller in blue looked solemn. He looked at the red phoenix star zone in the distance with a heavy heart. The sovereigns of the primordial demon realm had arrived so quickly. It was beyond their expectations. Old friend. The Lord of the Realm's voice came from the starry sky. Understood. The fortune teller in blue nodded. He tapped the long staff in his hand. Suddenly, a strange light rose, and the ancient city behind him disappeared. In the starry sky, the shadows of the four sovereigns flashed past. They were so fast that even starlight couldn't catch up with them. In the Z-Way star zone, the calamity was about to arrive. In the realm beyond heaven, the human cultivators all focused and prepared to fight to the death. On the floating island closest to the divine peak, Ningchen also felt the powerful aura from the distant starry sky. He got down from his bed and walked to the wooden house. You haven't recovered yet. Don't get down from the bed and walk around. In front of the wooden house, Qin Ning walked over with a bowl of medicine and scolded softly. Didn't you notice it? Ningchen looked into the distance and asked. So what if I did? What can you do in your current condition? Qin Ning scolded. Ningchen fell silent when he heard that. He didn't know how to answer. Go back to the house and rest. Qin Ning ordered. Ningchen nodded and walked back to the house quietly without saying anything else. In the Z-Way star zone, demonic qi filled the air. With the Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor as the leader, the four sovereigns finally arrived. Their boundless aura spread out in all directions like raging waves. Get ready. The Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor glanced at the three behind him and said, Okay. Yuluo, the Scale Emperor, and the Master of the Western Sacred Region nodded at the same time. With a soft cry, their aura surged and rose to the extreme. The four sovereigns displayed their aura. The starry sky couldn't bear the terrifying power. With the four sovereigns as the center, it started to collapse rapidly. Under the eyes of the world, a shocking scene took place in the Z-Way star zone. Wherever the aura of the four sovereigns passed, the stars collapsed and turned into dust, dissipating between heaven and earth. In the major star zones, the human experts felt the terrifying aura of the sovereign Tao of the Z-Way star zone and couldn't help but tremble. At the border between the Red Luan and the Spirit Void star zone, among thousands of meteorites, in the number 1 pavilion, the Night Master looked in the direction of the Z-Way star zone with a solemn look in his eyes. What were the four sovereigns trying to do? Were they going to fight now? If so, the first Kunyi Demon Emperor should have shown himself. In the Z-Way star zone, Doomsday Tribulation. The Sovereign Tao crushed everything in its path, turning everything into dust and disappearing. In the sacred land of the Heavens Province, Chao Tianxi looked at the distant starry sky with a solemn expression. She didn't expect the primordial demon realm to start invading the Z-Way star zone so soon. It was really bad news. At this moment, sword light soared into the sky from the depths of the sacred land. In an instant, a black-robed figure walked out of the sword light. The Heaven Sword Master had reappeared in the world. Chao Tianxi felt it. She looked over and her eyes narrowed. Why did the Sword Master come out of seclusion so soon? In the void, the Heaven Sword Master, Muchanga, who was dressed in black, walked over. His sword chi was extremely powerful. The extreme Tao King realm was beyond the ordinary King realm cultivators. He was the king of swords and all swords submitted to him. Seeing the strange aura around the Sword Master, Chao Tianxi's eyes trembled. Sadness flashed across her face. Don't be sad for me. This is my own choice. 3 years ago, the sword of the legend of the Xia dynasty shocked the world. Now, it's time for me to prove my sword, Muchanga said with a smile. Chao Tianxi clenched her slender hands. After a long time, she suppressed the sadness in her heart and said, Go. The Heavens Mansion will be fine with me. Thank you. From now on, the Heavens Mansion will be in your care. As soon as he finished speaking, in the void, tens of thousands of swords soared into the sky. The Heaven Sword Master's figure disappeared and rushed into the distant starry sky. In the divine realm of Crepe Myrtle, just as the Master of the divine realm was about to intervene and stop this catastrophe, he was suddenly shocked and looked into the distance. That was the sword. Across the endless starry sky, The fortune-teller in green also felt the earth-shattering sword power in the distance. His expression changed. When did such an amazing swordsman appear in the human world? In the divine realm, in the wooden house on the floating island, Ning Chen, who had just returned to the house and sat down, suddenly stood up and quickly walked out of the house. This was the Heaven's Sword Master. In the wooden house, Qing Ning sighed softly and said, "If you want to go, go. After all he taught you, it's not a big deal to send him off." In front of the wooden house, Ning Chen clenched his fists so hard that they cracked. There was a trace of emotion in his cold eyes. Without hesitation he stepped out and left. In the starry sky, tens of thousands of swords sped through the void. In a few breaths, they passed through one star after another and rushed into the distance. In the distance, the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor, the Master of the Sanctuary, the Scale Emperor, and Yuluwu felt the pressure of the swords coming from afar. Their eyes flashed with seriousness. What a powerful sword pressure! It had already surpassed the King realm and was infinitely close to the Sovereign realm. There was such a powerful swordsman in the human race. The world was watching. Not long after, tens of thousands of swords sped from the depths of the starry sky and appeared before the 4 sovereigns. Among the swords, there was a swordsman in black. His eyebrows were sharp and his eyes were bright. His powerful sword intent continued to rise and transcended the limits of his physical body. He was once a swordsman who could fight against the legends of the great Xia. After his defeat back then, he honed his sword for 100 years. Today, he had made another breakthrough and shocked the world. The human race is really not to be underestimated. The Scale Emperor's eyes flashed coldly. He stepped out and golden scales covered his body. The absolute defense blocked the sword chi that kept coming at him. Chapter 1266. The final tribulation of the Ziwei star zone had arrived. The 4 emperors appeared at the same time. Their imperial aura spread and destroyed the world. At this moment of crisis, tens of thousands of swords flew past in the starry sky. The sword pressure was shocking, and it was heading straight for the emperors. The 4 emperors sensed it, and their expressions turned serious. What a shocking sword intent! The Scale Emperor stepped forward. Golden light shone brightly around him, and golden scales appeared, blocking the swords that pierced through the sky. A peerless sword. Under everyone's gazes, a person flew over on a sword. His clothes were as black as ink, and his eyes were cold. The Tianfu sword master had been refining his sword for 100 years. Once he unsheathed it, it was stunning. "Are you the only one?" The Scale Emperor looked at the black-robed swordsman in front of him and said coldly, "You alone can't save the world. What if you include me?" As he spoke, the starry sky stirred. An old figure walked out. His withered body didn't have a trace of true chi, but he gave off an indescribable pressure. The Emperor of the human race. Seeing the newcomer, the eyes of the 4 emperors of the primordial demon realm flashed coldly. The main character had finally arrived. 4 against 2. Boring. Yu Luwu said indifferently with his hands behind his back. He didn't plan to attack. "Since you don't think your opponents are enough, I'll add me." As he spoke, a fortune-teller in green walked out from the starry sky. He held a long staff in his hand. He looked to be in his 40s, and his imperial aura was hidden. 4 against 3. Yulu glanced at the 3 peerless powerhouses of the human race and said coldly, "It's still not enough." Enough. In front of the fortune-teller, the master of the divine land looked deep into the starry sky and said softly. As soon as he said that, a dragon's roar shook the sky. In the dazzling golden light, a 5-clawed golden dragon sped over. Its unusually powerful aura was comparable to the top emperors of the 100 races. The next moment, the golden dragon transformed. It had a familiar face, and it was wearing a white robe. It was extraordinary. The descendant of the dragon race, young Master Xiaobai, had been reborn and reappeared in the world. The dragon race. The 7 luminaries demon emperor sensed it. His expression turned cold. After all, the dragon race's descendant had become an emperor. "It's 4 against 4 now. Are you satisfied?" Young Master Xiaobai appeared and looked at the master of the divine capital. Interesting. When the successor of the Dragon Clan appeared, Yuluo's lips curled into a cold smile. His royal might sword and his aura sword. With the 3 sovereigns of the human race out, the last bit of hesitation disappeared. Among the 10,000 swords, the heavenly sword master did not hesitate any longer. He stepped out and initiated the battle. The blazing sword light was dazzling. It tore through the starry sky and swept toward the scaled ruler in front of it. The swordsmen attacked, and a great battle broke out. Not far away, the 3 sovereigns of the human race were fighting against the 3 sovereigns of the demonic territory. Powerful imperial might filled the air, shaking the stars in the sky. Yuluo crossed his arms and a crescent-shaped blade appeared. It was so powerful that even immortal realm cultivators feared it. In front, young Master Xiaobai clenched his right hand, and the Dragon Emperor divine weapon appeared. The sword turned into a spear, and golden light shone brightly. The emperors began to fight, and the divine weapons competed. As soon as they clashed, an earth-shattering sound rang out, and the emperor's might roared into the heavens. While the master of the divine capital and young Master Xiaobai were fighting, the master of the realm of gods and the fortune-teller in blue robes stepped forward to stop the 7 Brilliance demon emperor and the master of the western sacred region. The atmosphere was tense, and a great battle was about to break out. Want to spar? The fortune-teller smiled as he looked at the Golden Lion Clan's holy sovereign. Sure. The Golden Lion Clan's holy sovereign nodded. He gathered essence in his right fist and golden light rose. The fortune-teller in blue robes also crossed his long staff. Azure light filled the air, and imperial might appeared. The 2 emperors who didn't use their full strength exchanged fists and palms. Their moves were exquisite, but they restrained 30% of their power. It was more exciting than intense. On the other side, the 7 Brilliance demon emperor and the master of the realm of gods stood facing each other. Their imperial might could be vaguely seen, and neither of them made the first move. The human race has really impressed me. The 7 Brilliance demon emperor looked at the 3 battles in the distance and said coldly, "There are still many unexpected things about the human race. It's still too early to be surprised," the master of the realm of gods said lightly. The 7 Brilliance demon emperor sneered and said, "Unfortunately, no one can change the outcome of the human race's defeat. Just like the swordsman in front of us. No matter how amazing he is, it's only his last glory before his defeat." As he spoke, tens of thousands of swords swept across the starry sky. The shocking sword pressure shattered one star after another. The supreme sword intent made all laws pale in comparison. Mu Chang'e transcended the limits of his physical body, and his sword intent rose infinitely. His blood and chi kept burning as he gave his all to surpass his swordsmanship. The supreme sword intent and absolute defense kept clashing. Even the emperor of the scaled tribe didn't dare to be careless in front of the shocking sword. Golden scales covered his body and blocked the swordsman's attacks. "Swordsman, is it worth it?" The emperor of the scaled tribe turned his palm and shook off the thousands of sword radiances in front of him. He looked at the swordsman in front of him and said in a deep voice. He knew that he would die in this battle, but he still stood in front of them without hesitation. Where did his courage and determination come from? "It's worth it." After the thousands of sword radiances, the heavenly sword master arrived. He unsheathed his divine sword, heavenly sword, and the sky changed color. The divine sword shook the golden scales, and a violent collision sound was heard. The divine sword and the golden scales clashed, and sparks flew everywhere. Ha! Mu Chang'e's sword momentum was blocked. He shouted, and the sword intent around him rose again. His blood and chi burned fiercely, and the bloody flames were dazzling. It shocked the heavens and the earth for a moment. The unparalleled sword pressure kept spreading. Heavenly sword could feel the determination in its master's heart. The sword let out a sorrowful cry, and endless spiritual chi burst out. It was a sword with no regrets. Crack! Cracks appeared on the body of the sword. The heavenly tower burned itself. Similarly, it had bet everything on this final battle. Man and sword, one heart and breath. The boundless sword intent shook the heavens and the earth. Under the terrifying impact, the emperor of the scaled tribe felt his chest sink, and he couldn't help but take half a step back. Back off! The emperor of the scaled tribe retreated, and he was furious. He gathered the energy in his palm and counterattacked. The surging palm energy imprinted on the swordsman's body. Blood splattered everywhere, and Mu Changa's figure flew back 1,000 feet, severely injured. 10th sword. 1,000 feet away, Mu Changa's figure stopped. His blood didn't stop flowing, and his sword momentum didn't stop. The 10th sword appeared, and it slayed immortals and demons. In the dazzling sword radiance, an unusually bright ancient sword appeared and slashed down from the sky. As the immortal slaying sword fell, the emperor of the scaled tribe gathered his energy and blocked the ancient sword in front of him. Boom! Sword chi and palm energy collided, and the aftershocks roared. Layers of sword chi broke through the emperor of the scaled tribe's palm energy and approached him again. The heavenly sword master, who was burning his life to forcefully raise his cultivation level, raised his sword intent to an unimaginable level. Wherever his sword chi went, it was invincible. Clang! Sword chi and golden scales collided, and the stalemate lasted for a moment. In front of him, Mu Changa's figure flashed past, and his sword broke through the sky. Boom! The peerless divine weapon shook the emperor of the scaled tribe again, and a huge impact passed through his body. The emperor of the scaled tribe felt the blood in his body churning violently, and he took 3 steps back. Being forced back by a human king again, the emperor of the scaled tribe became more and more furious. He gathered his energy and punched out. In the moment of crisis, 10,000 swords protected Mu Changa. An instant later, the emperor of the scaled tribe broke through the 10,000 swords and mercilessly landed on the swordsman's body. Ugh! With the emperor of the scaled tribe, Mu Changa flew out again. His body was cracked, and his physical body was at its limit. 11th sword. The divine sword rose into the sky, and 10,000 swords soared into the sky. The perfect sword of the mortal world reappeared in the mortal world. The sword of no beginning, the sword of no end. Wherever the sword flowed past, the starry sky shattered and collapsed. Useless move. The emperor of the scaled tribe raised his hand, and golden light spread out, forming a barrier in front of him. An instant later, the 10,000 swords swept past and continuously crashed into the barrier formed by the emperor's laws. There was a deafening rumble. In front of the golden barrier, the 10,000 swords collapsed, unable to break through the emperor's laws. 12th sword. There was no limit to the sword's extremity. Only the sword's will was complete. As the battle reached its climax, Mu Changa let out a low cry, and the surrounding blood turned into swords, magnificent and dazzling. Swords that surpassed the limits of the mortal world coiled around the swordsman's body, bright red and unusually dazzling. In the distance, demonic energy surged, and a young man in black clothes and black hair appeared. Looking at the battle in front of him, his deep eyes flashed with a hint of emotion. The kindness of teaching could not be forgotten. Demons were fickle, but they were not stupid. In front of him, the 12th sword appeared. The swordsman's body moved, and the sword followed. The shocking sword slashed the protective barrier in front of the emperor of the scaled tribe. Close at hand, there was another violent collision sound. The heavenly sword slashed the golden scales on the emperor's chest for the 3rd time. It was the same position, but the power was several times stronger. After colliding again and again, the cracks on the heavenly sword became more and more obvious. In this desperate battle, the spiritual energy on the sword was rapidly depleted, and it was also on the verge of collapse. Crack! The cracking sound was heard again, but this time, it was slightly different. On the golden scales on the emperor of the scaled tribe's chest, an almost undetectable crack appeared. Although it was very small, everyone present could clearly sense it. At this moment, on the other 3 battlefields, the Lord of the Western Sacred Region, the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor, and the Lord of the Divine Capital were all surprised. No one expected this to happen. The scaled tribe's absolute defense was famous in the world. It was hard to find a match for it in the same realm. The Scaled tribe was the strongest in the Scaled tribe. In terms of defense, the Scaled tribe was definitely the best in the world. Now, right in front of them, the Scaled tribe's absolute defense was broken by a human king realm swordsman. It was unbelievable. Jiming Marquis watched carefully. "This is my last sword." The emperor of the Scaled tribe had a flaw. In the void, Muchanga let out a loud cry. Blood chi erupted around him, and endless blood flames soared into the sky. Sword. Thunth. With a shout of 13th sword, the entire Ziwei galaxy began to shake violently before the sword was drawn. The world-shaking sword changed the color of the sky. In the sky above the battlefield, tens of thousands of lightning bolts blocked out the light of the stars. In the next moment, the Tianfu swordsman's body quickly turned into ashes. His chi and blood were burned out. All of his strength was poured into the last sword. A swordsman who has entered the Tao. In the starry sky, the 7 luminaries demon emperor looked at the only visible sword in front of him. He could not hide the shock in his eyes. This scene was so familiar. When a swordsman entered the Tao, his physical body would disappear. Without the restrictions of his physical body, his sword intent would rise to the extreme. As far as his eyes could see, the stars were his sword. Sand was his sword. Everything in the world was his sword. Crack. On the heavenly tower, the cracking sound of the sword was heard again. In an instant, the divine sword pierced through the sky. Supported by the universe, it turned into a dazzling, blazing meteor and slashed at the Scaled tribe. Under the shocked gazes of the emperors, the blazing meteor crashed into the Scaled tribe's emperor. An earth-shattering explosion was heard. The aftermath whistled and swallowed everything around it. Chapter 1267. In the starry sky, the swordsman's final battle received the Tianfu swordmaster's sword that protected all living beings. He surpassed the limits of the king realm and broke through to the sovereign realm. The swordsman proved his swordsmanship. 13 heads appeared on the sword. With one slash, the gods, demons, and Buddhas were all terrified. The sovereigns of both realms were shocked. In the battle, the blazing meteor crashed into the Scaled tribe sovereign. An earth-shattering explosion resounded through the universe. Ugh! The aftermath whistled and a painful groan was heard. The heavenly tower pierced through the Scaled emperor's chest. The shattered scales could no longer stop the divine weapon's sharpness. With extreme speed and a sword will that surpassed the limits of endurance, the heavenly tower quickly turned into ashes and disappeared. 10 steps away, the Scaled emperor staggered and stabilized himself. Looking at the sword that disappeared from his chest, the fear in his eyes had not dissipated. Suddenly, blood burst out from the Scaled emperor's chest and dyed the sky red. Ugh! With another groan, the Scaled emperor clutched his chest. He staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. The sword shocked the world. The sovereign was severely injured and almost died. The shattered scales fell from the Scaled emperor's chest silently. The fatal sword destroyed the sovereign's greatest trump card. At this moment, a black light flashed in the distance. A divine sword surrounded by ghostly aura broke through the air and slashed at the Scaled tribe sovereign who was on the verge of death. In the moment of crisis, the Scaled emperor forcefully channeled his vital energy and turned his palm to block the ghostly sword. With a clang, the sword and palm collided. The aftermath whistled and Ning Chen's figure retreated 10 feet to avoid the impact. With his severely injured body channeling his vital energy again, the Scaled emperor spat out blood and dyed the golden scales in front of him red. In front of him, Ning Chen's cold eyes flashed with regret. What a pity! The sword just now was the best chance to get rid of the Scaled emperor. If he was at his peak, he might have succeeded. But now he was powerless. Bastard, your sword is so weak. How are you going to kill me? The Scaled emperor suppressed his injuries and said in a low voice. Ning Chen waved his hand and put away the sword. So what if you wait a few more days? Scaled emperor, you won't be able to keep your life for long. The battle here ended. In the battlefield not far away, young Master Xiaobai and Yulu clashed and separated. The battle. On the other side, the fortune teller in green and the saint leader of the Golden Lion clan no longer lingered in the battle. Their figures flew out and returned to their respective camps. In the third battle, the eyes of the Realm Master and the Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor darkened as they watched the battle in the distance. In the end, both sides suffered heavy losses. The Heavenly Mansion Swordmaster entered the Tao, while the Scaled Emperor was severely injured. No one expected this tragic battle to change the fate of the human tribe once again. So, are you going to stop? The Lord of the Divine Land withdrew his gaze and looked at the Celestial Devil Emperor in front of him. He said in a deep voice, "Now, it's 3 against 3. In the territory of the human tribe, what are the chances of the Devil Emperor winning?" The Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor's expression darkened. He glanced at the Scaled Emperor who had almost lost the ability to fight and said coldly, "Fall back." The Demon Emperor left just like that? Just as the 4 emperors of the demonic realm were about to leave, the 3rd empress of the human race said coldly. The Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor stopped and looked at the source of the voice. He didn't hide the murderous intent in his eyes. He said, 13th son, don't think that I can't kill you just because you have the protection of the human emperors. The life of a knowing destiny cultivator is not worth mentioning. If the Demon Emperor wants it, you can take it at any time. However, the Demon Emperor must be more interested in the Luo Jia, All Heavens, Lingshu, and All-Cade Star Zones, Ningchen said calmly. The 4 emperors of the demonic realm all stopped when they heard this. Their eyes glittered. You must have seen the strength of the human tribe after the battle between the 2 realms. It's not easy for the primeval demon realm to defeat the human tribe. At the same time, the human tribe doesn't want to suffer too many casualties. Instead of both sides suffering heavy losses, why don't we use the primeval demon realm and the human tribe as the wager? If the primeval demon realm wins, the 4 star zones will be yours. If the primeval demon realm loses, the primeval demon realm will retreat to the Red Phoenix star zone and stop fighting for 10 years, Ningchen said in a deep voice. Using the 4 star zones to wager 10 years of peace for the human tribe. Kid, you're really confident. The Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor said coldly, "Tell me, how do you want to bet?" The king-level debate will be decided in 3 rounds. The primeval demon realm and the human tribe will each send out 3 king-level experts. They will compete with spears, swords, and halberds respectively. The side that wins 2 rounds first will be the final winner, Ningchen suggested. The 4 emperors of the demonic realm looked at each other. They were moved, but they were also cautious. The 13th prince had once stirred up the demonic realm by himself. He was so cunning that they had to be wary of him. Not far away, the master of the godly realm remained silent. He didn't stop Ningchen because of his decision. What is this kid trying to do? Old friend, aren't you going to stop him? On the side, the fortune teller in green frowned and asked through voice transmission. It was too childish to entrust the safety of the human tribe to a wager that had a low chance of winning. I believe in him. The master of the godly realm didn't explain too much. He just replied calmly. He knew very well that the Jiming Marquis was an absolutely rational person. He wouldn't blindly make a decision that was detrimental to the human tribe. Compared to the 100 races, the human tribe was inferior. It was only a matter of time before the 4 major star zones were lost. If the human tribe could recover for 10 years with a king-level debate, it was worth it. Similarly, the emperors of the primeval demon realm wouldn't reject this suggestion. After all, 10 years was nothing compared to the gains and losses of the 4 major star zones. In front, the Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor waved his hand and sealed the surrounding space. He discussed the human tribe's suggestion with the emperors of the 3 sovereign families. After a long time, the sealed space opened. The Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor walked out. He looked at the human tribe's emperors and said in a deep voice, "The primeval demon realm can accept your suggestion, but we need to make some changes." "Your Majesty, please speak," Ningchen said calmly. The king-level debate between the 2 realms will be changed from 3 to 5 rounds. The winner will be decided by the saber, spear, sword, halberd, and palm. The side that wins 3 rounds first will be the winner, the Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor said seriously. Ningchen had heard this before. He narrowed his eyes and thought for a moment. He nodded and said, "All right. Since the Demon Emperor has changed the number of rounds, the human tribe will decide the time and place. Do you have any objections?" "Sure, but I hope the human tribe won't make us wait too long," the Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor said calmly. "Of course. After all, we also want to stop this war as soon as possible," Ningchen said calmly. "Then I'll wait for your news in the primeval demon realm." After that, the Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor didn't say anything else. Demonic chi surged around him and gradually disappeared. On the side, the three Demonic Realm Emperors also faded and left the Ziwei Star Zone. After the four Demonic Realm Emperors left, the human tribe's emperors in the starry sky also withdrew their auras. They looked at the remaining 10,000 sword fragments and sighed in their hearts. What a pity! In front of the 10,000 sword fragments, Ningchen bowed silently to bid farewell to the Sword Master of the Heavenly Mansion. He had seen Sword 13 and had seen it clearly. "Let's go." Not far away, the Master of the Godly Realm said, "Let's go back." Ningchen nodded and turned to leave with the former. In the center of the floating island in the Ziwei Godly Realm, on the majestic peak, the void rolled as the Master of the Godly Realm and Knowing Destiny walked out one after another. On the peak, Peacock, who had been waiting patiently, saw the two return. She bowed first and then asked seriously, "Master, how's the situation?" "The four Demonic Realm Emperors have left for now. However, the Sword Master of the Heavenly Mansion has achieved the path of swordsmanship. He can't be saved." The Master of the Godly Realm sighed softly. Peacock's body trembled slightly and fell silent. When will the sacrifice of the human tribe stop? When will this catastrophe end? Peacock asked herself, but she still couldn't find the answer. Knowing Destiny Marquis, how confident are you in your suggestion? The Master of the Godly Realm looked at the black-robed young man and asked. 50%, Ningchen said calmly. Only 50%? Hearing this, the Master of the Godly Realm's eyes flashed and said, "It's not low. You know the situation of the primordial demon realm best. If you need anything, the Godly Realm will cooperate fully." "Thank you, Master of the Godly Realm." Ningchen nodded and said, "Before deciding on the martial artist, I need to go back to the underworld. Miss Peacock, come with me." While speaking, Ningchen looked at the girl beside him and said seriously. Peacock heard this and raised her head. She was startled at first, but after a while, she came back to her senses and nodded lightly. "Master, I'll go now." Peacock bowed respectfully and said goodbye. "Be careful." The Master of the Godly Realm said. Peacock replied softly and turned the wheelchair around and walked down the mountain. "Sister Qing Ning, we're going back." Ningchen's voice came from the neighboring floating island and reminded her. In front of the wooden house, Qing Ning, who was busy, heard the message and quietly put down what she was doing and walked away. At the foot of the mountain, Qing Ning walked over and walked behind Peacock. She pushed the wheelchair and said, "Let's go." The three of them left the Godly Realm and rushed towards the underworld. "Master, what's the proposal you mentioned?" Peacock asked on the way. Behind her, Qing Ning also looked over with some doubts in her eyes. Using the Luo Jia, Heavens, Spirit Void, and Alcade star domains as the wager to bet on the future of the human race, Ningchen's expression turned serious as he told the two girls about the wager between them and the four emperors of the demonic realm. "He's crazy." Peacock's expression changed when she heard this. She could not believe that her master would agree to such a wager. "Otherwise, do you think there's any other way for human beings to go?" Ningchen said coldly. This time, if the Sword Master of the Heaven sect did not use his life to severely injure the Emperor of the Scaled Race, how could the three emperors of the demonic realm stop the four emperors of the demonic realm? 10 years is the limit that the primordial demon realm can accept. But the human race needs any time to rest, even if it's only 10 years. Back then, the senior protected the two realms and fought for 10 years for the human race. Now, the Sword Master of the Heaven sect used his life as the price to fight for another 10 years for the human race. No matter what, they had to seize the opportunity. Saber, spear, sword, halberd, palm. Qing Ning murmured softly and said, "The primordial demon realm has the commander of the imperial army Xian Mo for the saber, the god of war Azura for the spear, the number 1 sword master Xuanqi for the sword, and the number 1 palm master Xianlai for the palm. It's not easy to win one battle against these 4 people, let alone 3. Ningchen this time may really have to risk his life." Chapter 1268. In the Z-Way galaxy, between 2 huge stars, a primitive planet floated. On the planet, 12 huge palaces towered into the sky, majestic and awe-inspiring. On this day, in the sky above the underworld, 3 figures passed through the seal of the underworld and entered it. In the 10 halls of hell and the 2 halls of impermanence, the kings of the underworld felt it and looked up at the sky, their expressions serious. Jiming was finally back. "Everyone, please come to the King of Hell's palace, we have something important to discuss." After a few breaths, Ningchen walked to the front of the king's palace and transmitted his voice to the various halls before stepping into the palace. Not long after, in front of the palace, the kings of the human race rushed over from the various halls and gathered at the King of Hell's palace. The 12 halls of hell that usually did not interfere with each other were all here today. The atmosphere was very serious. Even Luo Xingchen, who was always cynical, looked serious. In the king's palace, in front of the long table, the kings of the underworld sat down one after another and looked at Jiming in front of them, their eyes filled with doubts. "Today, I have invited all of you here to discuss something." Ningchen did not beat around the bush and directly told them about the bet between the human race and the primordial demon realm. He looked at the kings of the underworld seriously and said, "Do you have any suggestions?" In front of the long table, Luo Xingchen and the others all fell silent after hearing that. The underworld and the primordial demon realm were finally going to face each other. Saber, spear, sword, halberd, palm. The primordial demon realm has peerless experts at the peak of the king realm, especially the war god Azura and the primordial demon realm's number 1 swordsman, Xuanqi, who are infinitely close to the emperor realm. Against these 2, no one dares to say that they can win, they might even be in danger. So, for this bet we must be very careful with the candidates. Outside the 11 kings of the underworld, Peacock spoke up and reminded them. "It seems that I will be the first to be eliminated in the martial arts competition." Luo Xingchen said helplessly. Ningchen nodded and said, "The characteristics of your martial arts are not good for facing the enemy head-on. You are not suitable for the martial arts competition." Luo Xingchen was speechless. Although it was the truth, it still hurt him when it was said out loud. The saber martial arts competition, the candidates are actually not difficult, but Mu Qianshang opened his mouth to speak, but before he could finish, he paused. "Senior Sister Dai's whereabouts are unknown, so I can only take this round. In this way, I won't be able to participate in the sword and palm rounds," Ningchen said seriously. "We don't lack sword experts. However, our opponent is the demon realm's number 1, mysterious sword. It will be very difficult to win this round." Luo Xingchen interrupted. "The difference in their cultivation levels is too great. If the sword Dao cannot be suppressed, then there is almost no hope of victory. However, there is no one in this world who can suppress the sword Dao of mystery anymore. This round, the humans are bound to lose." Peacock analyzed calmly. "Let's not talk about this for now. Palm technique experts, do you have any suggestions?" Ningchen asked. "How about the Ghost King?" Luo Fei suggested. "That's inappropriate." Yishuan Miao shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about the loyalty of the Ghost Clan. Even if the Ghost King is willing to fight against the demon realm's number 1 palm technique expert, Xianlai, there is not much chance of victory." Ningchen nodded and said, "Previously, when the Ghost Clan migrated, the Ghost King and Xianlai fought briefly. Xianlai and the Ghost King's cultivation levels are almost the same, but Xianlai has the advantage of the Imperial Heavenly Demon bloodline. After a long battle, the Ghost King will not be able to gain the upper hand. Palm technique has the strictest requirements on one's foundation and cultivation level. If one's cultivation level is suppressed, it will be very difficult to win. Prince Qi Lin Yuzhen said seriously. Palm technique experts, the two strongest in the primordial demon realm, are the head of the 12 palaces of the Holy Region, Luo Jia, and the third prince of the heavenly demon royal family, Xianlai. Their strength should be about the same. Xianlai's body has the advantage, while Luo Jia has the title of demi-emperor. His moves are domineering, and no matter which one of them fights, it will not be easy to deal with them. Ning Chen said seriously. Luo Jia? He lost to you before. The primordial demon realm will not send him to fight. Peacock said. That may not be the case. Ning Chen said seriously. Luo Jia's strength is unfathomable. We were able to win against him last time largely because the Holy Region was in a hurry to take down the All-Heaven Star domain. After continuous battles, the strongest in the Holy Region has used up much of his strength. Adding on the fact that we were waiting for him to tire himself out, it was more or less luck that allowed us to win by half a move. If we fight again, I do not have the confidence to win against him. There are not many palm technique experts in the human race. Knowing Destiny is one, and the Chongling Female Supreme is another. Unfortunately, they are unable to fight now, Yixuan Miao said seriously. If there is no suitable candidate, then I will, Peacock said seriously from the side. Hearing this, everyone looked at the woman in the wheelchair. Surprise flashed across their faces. Miss Peacock's 5-colored divine light can restrict the opponent's body to the greatest extent. However, the 5-colored divine light has a limit. The two palm technique experts of the primordial demon realm are both peak experts of the king realm, and even half-step into the imperial way. Miss, are you confident? Prince Qi asked seriously. Peacock shook her head and said, against such experts, I do not dare to say I can win. I can only do my best. The kings of the underworld were silent and did not speak. The truth was so. Right now, they could only do their best and leave the rest to fate. Blade, sword, and palm, this will be the case for now. Tower Master, please take care of the spear. As he said this, Ning Chen looked directly at the nearby Dawn Moon Tower Master and said, Can I refuse? The Dawn Moon Tower Master smiled helplessly and said, Previously, when you came to play chess with me and mentioned Azura, I knew that this battle was unavoidable. Azura's spear is called Fire Beacon. It is on par with the mysterious heart-burning demon sword. They are both divine weapons ranked in the top 3 of the Celestial Devil Imperial family. Tower Master, it will be very dangerous against Azura this time. You must be careful, Ning Chen reminded. I understand. The Dawn Moon Tower Master nodded. Since this battle could not be avoided, he would do his best. Legends would be surpassed by later generations. He would do everything he could to break the legend of Azura's invincibility. What about the halberd? Luo Xingchen asked. Among the human cultivators we know, there doesn't seem to be any halberd experts. Hearing this, the kings of the netherworld also looked at the knowing destiny in front of them, and their expressions became serious. The final battle of the halberd was the biggest problem because they might not even have a candidate to participate in this battle. I don't have a suitable candidate here for now, Ning Chen said seriously. Looking at the saintess beside him, he asked, Peacock, are there any halberd experts in the immortal realm? There are, but the difference in level is too big. At this point, Peacock's face flashed with emotion. She continued, if the opponent is an ordinary king realm expert, it might be possible. But against experts like Azura and Xuanqi, there is almost no chance of winning. Ning Chen frowned and pondered for a moment. Then he said, there are many halberd experts in the primordial demon realm, but only Garuda of the 8 is qualified to participate in this battle. Garuda's strength is ranked in the top 3 of the 8. He is not weak, but he is still a little weaker than Azura, the god of war. He is not an invincible opponent. If the human race can find a halberd expert to win this battle, it will be very advantageous for us. That being said, where can we find a halberd expert in such a short time? Luo Xingchen said with a worried face. Maybe we can go to the number 1 pavilion. Peacock suggested. Number 1 pavilion? What number 1 pavilion? Luo Xingchen was confused when he heard that. The number 1 pavilion is a human organization in the primordial demon realm. They have returned to the heavens beyond heaven, but I haven't had the time to tell you about this. Ningchen explained patiently. The number 1 pavilion is led by the Night Master and has 5 King Realm experts. I don't know much about them, but it seems that it is time to pay them a formal visit. I see. The kings of the underworld heard this and finally heard a piece of good news. You are injured, so it is not good for you to run around. I have met the Night Master once, so this time, let me go. Qing Ning said in a tone that allowed no refusal. Ningchen frowned again. The number 1 pavilion was located at the border of the Red Phoenix Star Zone and the Spirit Void Star Zone. Now that the flames of war were everywhere, it was extremely dangerous. It was definitely not a safe place. "Le Fei, you go with Miss Qing," Xia Zi said calmly. "Okay." Luo Fei nodded and said softly, "Thank you." Ningchen looked at the two and said seriously, "You are welcome." Xia Zi said lightly and replied, "There is no time to lose. Luo Fei and I will go first. Goodbye." After saying that, Qing Ning glanced at Luo Fei and nodded. She then got up and walked out of the hall. "Zi, I am leaving," Luo Fei whispered and got up to leave. In the hall, Ning Chen and Xia Zi looked at the two's backs. In their cold eyes, there was a trace of undetectable worry. In front of the long table, the kings of the underworld saw this scene and sighed. It seemed that even a demon could not be absolutely heartless. After the discussion, the kings of the underworld left one after another. Xia Zi was the last to get up. Before he left, he looked at Ji Ming and said calmly, "If you can't find a suitable candidate for the Battle of the Sword, I will go." After saying that, Xia Zi turned and walked out of the hall. "Good friend." Behind him, Ning Chen's voice sounded. In front of the hall, Xia Zi squatted down. "Thank you." In the hall, Ning Chen said seriously, "No need." Xia Zi replied lightly. Then, his figure flashed and flew toward the King Equal Hall in the distance. In the hall, Ning Chen got up and walked to the front of the hall. His expression became more and more serious. The battle of the two realms was a battle that would determine the fate of the human race. If the human race lost, they would not only lose the 4 star zones, but also the confidence of the entire human race. Originally, the human race had the absolute advantage in the Battle of the Sword. However, in just a few years, the senior had fallen into a coma and the Heavenly Mansion Sword Sovereign had entered the Tao. It was difficult to find a sword expert that could rival the primordial demon realm. Chapter 1269. To the east of the Hong Luan Star Zone, near the Spirit Void Star Zone, a huge pavilion floated between the natural barriers formed by thousands of meteorites. It was majestic and filled with the aura of time. The number 1 pavilion was the strongest human organization in the primordial demon realm. It had been walking in the darkness for thousands of years, searching for the hope of survival for the human race. The passage between the two realms opened, and the number 1 pavilion returned to the sky beyond sky to help the human race resist the invasion of the primordial demon realm. Hong Luan, Spirit Void, and the flames of war rose everywhere. In the number 1 pavilion, the masters of the 4 profound realms led the human race to stop the invasion of the divine capital mountain. After many days of fighting, they stopped the invasion of the divine capital mountain again and again. In the 4 profound realms, in the 4 strange small worlds, after many battles, the 4 returned one after another and took turns to recover. On this day, in the south of the Spirit Void Star Zone, 2 beams of light flew past and continued to rush toward the number 1 pavilion. After several days of rushing, the 2 kings of hell rushed without sleep and were not far from the number 1 pavilion. "We should be there soon," Qing Ning said in a serious tone as she looked ahead. "Yes." Beside her, Luo Fei nodded and said, "We have to be careful. If we encounter the army of the divine capital mountain, it won't be so easy to escape." Qing Ning nodded. The divine capital mountain was a rare royal family in the primordial demon realm, and there were many king realm experts. Once they encountered them, it would be quite troublesome. As they spoke, the two were getting closer and closer to the number 1 pavilion. After rushing for several days, the two had used up a lot of their energy. After rushing for more than half a day, Qing Ning stopped and looked at the woman beside her. She said, "Rest for half a day and try to recover your energy to avoid unnecessary accidents." Lu Fei nodded and stopped to adjust her breathing. In the starry sky, the two stopped to adjust their breathing. True Essence spread out and used immortal jades to recover their energy. Just as the two kings of hell were adjusting their breathing, the flames of war continued in the distance. The number 1 pavilion's northern region King Qing Shuang came out again, leading the northern profound realms forces to resist the vanguard of the divine capital mountain. The battle was fierce, and both sides had their wins and losses. The divine capital mountain's forces were quite strong, and even the northern region king couldn't gain the upper hand. Retreat. The battle was unfavorable for the time being. Qing Shuang didn't continue fighting and ordered the army to retreat. The army of the northern profound realm retreated. In just a few breaths' time, they had already left the battlefield. Behind them, in front of the divine capital army, Divine General Bai Chuan looked at the retreating human tribe experts and frowned slightly. Just as he was about to lead his troops in pursuit, Bai Chuan suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked into the distance with a serious expression. "What is this aura?" "The king of the human race." In the distance, a faintly discernible aura could be felt. It was powerful and pure. Bai Chuan focused his attention and said, "Be alert. There might be an ambush." Several generals in Luoyang responded. They looked ahead and were on full alert. In the starry skies, Qing Ning and Lu Fei, who had just rested for a moment and were about to set off again, felt the powerful aura of the divine capital army in the distance. They stopped in their tracks. Not good. Qing Ning and Lu Fei glanced at each other, a dignified light flashing in their eyes. The thing they were most worried about had happened. They must have also sensed our aura. The reason why they haven't made a move is probably because they fear that we have an ambush here. Lu Fei calmly said. Qing Ning nodded and said with a solemn expression, "It's better to be careful. We're not too far away from the number 1 pavilion. We have to bring the news no matter what." Understood. Lu Fei nodded and said, "Let's go. Let's speed up and rush over while they're still hesitating." But Qing Ning responded. Without further delay, she rushed out and sped up. Behind her, Lu followed and rushed forward together. In the distance, in the starry skies, the divine capital army sensed 2 human kings rapidly approaching, and their expressions became increasingly solemn. "They're here." Several hundred miles ahead of the divine capital army, 2 figures flashed past without stopping. Divine General Bai Chuan and several other generals in Luoyang were startled. They glanced at each other, not understanding what was going on. "There's no ambush. We've been deceived." After them. In front of the divine capital army, Divine General Bai Chuan was the first to react. He immediately ordered. Behind him, the generals of Luoyang obeyed and rushed out in pursuit. The army moved forward like a surging tide, vast and mighty, shaking the heavens and earth. In front of them, Qing Ning and Lu Fei sensed something. Their expressions turned cold and they sped up. In the blink of an eye, they were thousands of miles away. "I'll go ahead and stop them. Catch up as soon as possible." In front of the divine capital army, Divine General Bai Chuan ordered coldly. His speed increased several times as he sped away. In a race of time, streaks of light streaked across the starry skies at extreme speeds. "They're almost there." Lu Fei sensed a powerful aura rapidly approaching from behind and said, "Ignore it. Let's hurry," Qing Ning said in a deep voice. Lu Fei nodded and sped up again. In a life and death chase, there was no time to stop. Behind them, Divine General Bai Chuan sped up. With his late-stage king realm cultivation, he had the advantage at this moment. More than an hour later, Divine General Bai Chuan was already within 100 miles of the two. A great battle was about to begin. 9 evils young annihilating palm. Evil essence gathered and a palm shook the heavens. After another 10 miles, Divine General Bai Chuan gathered his essence and launched a powerful attack. The vast and surging palm energy was unleashed. Its shocking power shook the stars. In front, Qing Ning and Luofei sensed it and had to stop. They gathered their essence to block the attack. A palm that shattered the void crossed 100 miles. In the blink of an eye, the palm's strength was already within reach. Scroll of the Moon, Silent Moonfall. As the palm's strength arrived, Luofei stepped forwards. She used the Heavenly Book's ability and moonlight filled the air, sealing the world. An astonishing scene occurred. Wherever the moonlight passed, the starry skies lost color. Meteors stopped moving, coming to a standstill. Let's go! The moment that time stopped, Luofei grabbed Qing Ning by her side and flashed away once more. Bang! A moment later, the palm's strength crashed into a meteor. A heaven-shaking explosion sounded out and the entire meteor exploded. Rubble flew everywhere, filling the starry skies. Strange. Divine General Baichuan frowned. Without further delay, he continued to chase. After a moment of delay, the distance between the three of them increased by 1,000 miles once more. Up ahead, Luofei and Qing Ning sped forwards, getting closer and closer to the first Under Heaven pavilion. After chasing for an hour, more and more meteors appeared around the three of them. In the distance, there was a massive pavilion, towering and extraordinary. Within the pavilion, a beam of light flashed. The northern region King Qing Shuang returned, respectfully reporting to his superiors. "You've worked hard. Go and rest." In the void, a black throne floated up and down. In front of the throne, the Night Lord said calmly, "Yes." Qing Shuang bowed and turned to leave. Not long after the northern region king left, the Night Lord's expression suddenly froze as he looked into the distance. This Orwas? The Jiming Marquis elder sister. In the blink of an eye, the Night Lord's figure disappeared from the black throne, leaving the void. At the border of the two regions, between the millions of meteors, three figures sped past. Behind them, the divine capital's army had been pulled far away and couldn't catch up. "We're here." Up ahead, the massive pavilion could be vaguely seen. Qing Ning and Luofei stopped moving forward. "After chasing for so long, you should be tired." Qing Ning turned around and said coldly to the divine capital's general behind them, "You're not running anymore?" Divine General Baichuan's expression sank. Evil essence circulated and lightning filled the sky. Qing Ning glanced at the divine capital's flag in the distance, murderous intent surging out of her eyes. Now, she didn't have to worry about being delayed by the divine capital's army. The next moment, clear sky lotus aura surged around Qing Ning's body. Clear Saint Buddha energy circulated and a blue divine spear appeared. With the appearance of the divine weapon, Qing Ning moved. The spear was like a dragon breaking through the sea, striking first. Divine General Baichuan snorted coldly. He formed his evil essence into a palm and blocked the attack. With a boom, the palm and spear clashed. Righteous and evil clashed, sending shockwaves in all directions. After a moment of stalemate, a third figure arrived. Her slender hand formed moonlight as she slapped down. Divine General Baichuan frowned. He used his evil essence to block the second wave of attacks. 2 against 1. "You won't mind, right?" Madame Luofei lightly said. Moonlight blazed around her, dazzling and dazzling. The eternal night divine lady had been hiding her power for 100 years. Today, she once again showed her peerless beauty. Her body reflected the moonlight like a fairy from the moon palace. The two kings of the underworld worked together. Their spear and palm worked together seamlessly. One attacked and the other defended, multiplying their combat power. In the starry sky, the two kings of the underworld, who rarely fought, displayed a different style. Their shocking martial arts were rarely seen in the world. The battle between righteous and evil caused the sky to fall and the earth to overturn. Their palms intertwined, triggering lightning and fire. Their shocking power shocked everyone. Divine General Baichuan was a peak late-stage king realm cultivator. Evil essence swirled around his body. He was not at a disadvantage at all. After more than 10 moves, the three auras crisscrossed in the battle. Every move was powerful and they did not hold back at all. It was difficult to determine the outcome of this brilliant battle. One was deliberately stalling for time, waiting for the army of the divine capital to arrive. The other was fiercely attacking. The two kings worked together to destroy all evil. Just as the battle reached its climax, an unusually powerful aura appeared in the sky. Black airflow spread, darkening the entire world. You are really bold to cause trouble in the territory of the number 1 pavilion. As soon as he finished speaking, a black-robed figure walked out from the black airflow. His face was cold and he looked very young. However, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes were engraved with the aura of time. The Night Master, the highest leader of the number 1 pavilion, the peerless cultivator who dominated the night, made his first move. His dark origin was activated, and the world changed. The Night Master clenched his right hand, and the entire void shook. It was a shocking scene. The terrifying airflow kept pressing down. The dark world covered the stars in the sky. It was a pressure that surpassed the king realm. Vaguely, a trace of imperial aura appeared. It was powerful and heavy. It was abnormally shocking. In the battle, Divine General Baichuan felt it. His expression changed drastically. He did not dare to continue fighting. He shook off the battle with a palm, stepped forward, and leaped away. After the general of the divine capital left, the Night Master descended from the sky. He looked at the two women in front of him and said calmly, "Honored guests, please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Chapter 1270. In the number 1 pavilion, in the endless void, the Night Sovereign stood in front of a huge black throne. In front of him, two women with different styles arrived. The two kings of the underworld and the master of the number 1 pavilion were meeting for the first time. "Thank you, Pavilion Master, for your help just now." Qing Ning and Luofei bowed and thanked him. "It's nothing. You're welcome." The Night Sovereign revealed a gentle smile. "Honored guests, you've come from afar. May I know why you've come?" "It's about the competition between the two realms." Qing Ning's expression became serious as she explained the bet between the primal demon realm and the human race to the master of the number 1 pavilion. "Oh." The Night Sovereign listened quietly. A strange light flashed in his eyes. "There's actually such a thing? What do you think, Pavilion Master?" Qing Ning asked calmly. "The human race is weak. Although 10 years isn't a long time, the human race needs time to recuperate. This bet is worth it," the Night Sovereign said with certainty. "For the competition between the two realms, the candidates for the saber, spear, and palm have been decided. Only the sword and halberd have not been found. So, Fei and I came to ask for your help," Qing Ning said seriously. "Sword and halberd." The Night Sovereign's expression turned serious. He fell into deep thought. Qing Ning and Luofei waited quietly in front of him. The number 1 pavilion was able to survive in the primal demon realm until now, so it must have its own strengths. Especially this Night Sovereign, when he attacked just now, the cultivation he displayed was almost half a step into the Imperial Dao realm. It was shocking. If the number 1 pavilion could help this time, then the human race's chances of winning would be much higher. Pavilion Master. At this moment, in the Western Mystic Realm, a man in blue and white robes spoke with a serious expression. "A strong enemy is invading." In front of the black throne in the void, the Night Sovereign came back to his senses and said calmly, "Prepare to meet the enemy." The king of the Western region responded, "Honored guests, please wait a moment. There are some uninvited guests outside. I need to go out for a moment. After dealing with these people, we'll continue our discussion." The Night Sovereign said apologetically. Then, his figure faded and he left the throne. In the void, Qing Ning and Luofei exchanged glances. Their eyes flashed. Could it be that Shindu's army had chased them all the way here? Outside the number 1 under the heavens pavilion, thousands of meteorites floated up and down, forming a natural barrier to block enemies. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Outside the meteorite, 100,000 soldiers from the divine capital gathered. It was a majestic scene. In front of the divine capital army, Divine General Baichuan stood in the air and returned, his killing intent multiplied. The army was bearing down on them. In the distance, above the number 1 pavilion, multicolored light filled the air. 4 figures appeared out of thin air. Their powerful auras indicated that each of them was above the late stage of the king realm. The 4 lords of the profound realm showed up. Behind them, many profound realm warriors walked out and stood in the starry sky, facing the army of the divine capital. You dare to attack the world's number 1 pavilion with only 100,000 soldiers? You are very confident. As he spoke, a dark aura spread out in the starry sky. A black-robed figure descended from the sky. His body was full of dark energy. He was powerful and heavy, causing people to shudder. As the Night Lord descended, all the experts of the 4 profound realms bowed in unison, respectfully welcoming him. The strongest master of the Dark Night had reappeared in the world of mortals. His ancient eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked ahead. 100,000 soldiers aren't enough. What about us? At this moment, 4 figures covered in black robes walked out from behind the army of the divine capital. The moment they tore off their robes, a terrifying aura burst out. Peak King realm warriors with half their bodies in the ground were heavy with the aura of death. The aura of time flowed, giving people a very uncomfortable feeling. The foundation of the divine capital. In front of the number 1 pavilion, the Night Lord felt the aura of death from the 4. His face darkened. The divine capital mountain had even mobilized these old monsters. I'll leave the Night Lord to you, grand ancestors. Divine General Baichuan bowed and said politely. The 4 nodded and didn't say anything else. Their figures flashed and started the battle first. Seeing this, the Night Lord's expression turned cold. He condensed his aura in his palm and dashed out as well. 4 against 1. The battle had just started, and it quickly became white-hot. The peerless experts were fighting to the death. Dark energy and evil force collided. Evil aura soared into the sky and the clouds changed. Kill! The strongest of the number 1 pavilion, the Night Lord, was stalled. In front of the army of the divine capital, Divine General Baichuan's eyes flashed with killing intent. At his command, the army of 100,000 soldiers charged out. Their aura shook the sky. You don't know what's good for you. In front of the number 1 pavilion, the Lord of the Eastern region, Gu Shengtian, was surrounded by killing intent. He pointed his finger and the ancient Kuan heavenly sword was unsheathed. The leader of the 4 realms, the strongest sword of the human race in the primordial demon realm, displayed his amazing swordsmanship again. Kuan Tian broke through the sky. Sword chi swept across hundreds of miles. The charging army of the divine capital was immediately heavily injured. Blood and bones flew everywhere. Seeing this, Divine General Baichuan's evil aura surged as he stepped forward and joined the battle. Behind Divine General Baichuan, the 2 strongest guards also attacked. The 3 of them worked together to kill the Lord of the Eastern Profound Realm. 1,000 miles of wind. As the army of the divine capital arrived, a folding fan appeared in the Lord of the Western region's hand. He waved it elegantly and a gust of wind swept out. Burning city wall. Not far away, the Lord of the Southern region used a shocking martial art. Waves of fire surged around him and quickly spread forward. The 2 kings worked together. The wind helped the fire. Instantly, the 1,000 miles of fire burned and the starry sky turned into a sea of fire. The 3 lords of the Eastern Profound Realm all attacked. In front of the number 1 pavilion, the Lord of the Northern region, Qing Shuang, stood guard. Her body surged with frost as she guarded the last escape route. In the number 1 pavilion, Qing Ning and Luofei felt the intense battle outside and walked to the front of the pavilion. In the starry sky, the experts of the number 1 pavilion and the divine capital mountain all came out and fought fiercely. Blood and bones flew everywhere and dyed the starry sky red. After fighting for a while, the 2 inheritances began to suffer casualties. The number rose rapidly. It was a tragic scene. In front of the number 1 pavilion, Qing Shuang saw the 2 of them walk out. She looked serious and said, "You can wait in the pavilion. After the pavilion master deals with these small fries, he will come and entertain you." Qing Ning nodded. She looked at the battle in front and said softly, The underworld is best at dealing with these old monsters who don't have much time left. Perhaps we can help. Oh! Qing Shuang heard this, and a strange look flashed in her eyes. She did not refuse and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you." Qing Ning looked at the woman beside her and said, "You do it." Lu Fei nodded. Her true essence surged. In an instant, the starry sky shone brightly. Endless moonlight gathered from all directions. It was dazzling. Scroll of the Moon, Silent Moonfall. The heavenly book martial art appeared. With Lu Fei as the center, the moonlight spread rapidly. Wherever it passed, the world came to a standstill. A martial art that manipulated time was rare in the world. In the battle ahead, the 4 old ancestors of the divine capital paused. The aura of time was added to their bodies, causing their auras to become chaotic. Powerhouses that did not belong to this era were not tolerated by the heavens and earth. Time was merciless and would never let anyone go. The law of time affected the 4 old ancestors. The Night Lord took advantage of this and unleashed his full power. In an instant, his elemental essence rushed into the sky and drowned the starry sky. Heart-devouring palm. A shocking palm that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The Night Lord's figure flashed past and directly pressed his palm against the chest of one of the old ancestors. There was a loud rumble. Blood and bones scattered everywhere. With a palm that devoured the heart, one of the old ancestors of the divine capital exploded. With one of the old ancestors gone, the siege was broken. The Night Lord followed up with another attack. His elemental essence surged like a raging wave, blasting towards the 3 people in front of him. Not good. The 3 old ancestors of the divine capital were shocked. They looked at the unfamiliar woman in front of the number 1 pavilion in the distance with murderous intent in their eyes. There was someone in the human race who could control the law of time. This woman must not be allowed to live. 9 evils Yang destroying palm. After making up his mind, one of the old ancestors of the divine capital sent out a palm that broke through the air. The palm energy that brushed past him was unstoppable as it swept toward the number 1 pavilion in front of him. In front of the number 1 pavilion, Qing Shuang saw this and condensed cold air around her. Frost filled the sky and blocked in front of her. The palm force swept through and shattered the frost barrier. The remaining force was vast and mighty, continuing to sweep towards Lu. In the moment of crisis, Qing Ning stepped forward. Her Buddha energy surged and turned into a lotus. The clear sky lotus blocked the evil palm. An earth-shattering collision sounded. The 2 forces, one righteous and one evil, rapidly dissipated. The aftermath of the impact caused Qing Ning to take half a step back. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. "Qing Ning." Lu Fei reached out to support her and asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Qing Ning stabilized her body and said, "I'm just injured. It's nothing serious." Lu Fei nodded and looked at the 3 old ancestors of the divine capital in front of her. Her expression sank. The cultivation of these old monsters was truly astonishing. In a head-on clash, not many humans could stand up to these old monsters. This was only a part of the divine capital mountain's royal family. If all the royal families in the primordial demon realm were to use their full strength, how terrifying would it be? In the territory of the number 1 pavilion, an important guest was injured. In the battle, the Night Lord's murderous intent surged. The ruler of the dark world finally revealed his most terrifying side. Hidden light, demiurge broken 5 absolutes. The killing move was earth-shattering. The Night Lord moved, his figure illusory. 5 afterimages flickered. This was a move that had never been seen before. The old ancestor of the divine capital could not react in time and was hit by the palm force. Boom! A violent explosion sounded. Blood and bones filled the sky. The second old ancestor of the divine capital did not even have time to shout before his soul dissipated. It was a shocking scene. Everyone was shocked. For a moment, it was difficult for them to calm down. Retreat. The situation was rapidly deteriorating. The 2 patriarchs of Shindu shouted and quickly retreated. In the distance, Divine General Baichuan came back to his senses and immediately ordered the army to retreat. In front of the number 1 pavilion, the Night Lord and the 4 mysterious realm lords did not chase after them. Their figures flashed and returned to the pavilion. In the void, the Night Lord appeared in front of the throne. Looking at the 2 women in front of him, he said apologetically, "I'm sorry to have startled you." "You're too polite, Pavilion Lord. Speaking of which, these people came here so quickly because they were chasing us. We should be the ones apologizing." Qing Ning bowed. "Miss Qing, please don't say that." The Night Lord's expression turned serious. "It doesn't matter whose fault it is. The important thing is that the 2 of you are fine. As for the matter you mentioned before, the pavilion will reserve its position for the sword battle. However, the number 1 pavilion will take responsibility for the halberd battle. No matter what, we will win this battle for the human race." Chapter 1271. In the underworld, in the empty Wuchang West Hall, Ji Ming stood quietly for several days. No need to wait. In front of the Wuchang West Hall, Peacock turned her wheelchair and walked over. She looked at the young man in black and said calmly, "She has become a Grand Supreme. She can't come back." Grand Supreme indifference. Ning Chen muttered softly, and a wisp of bitterness that was difficult to notice flashed through his eyes that were deep like abysses. "You're different from before." In front of the palace, Peacock looked at the former and said, she had seen too much of the coldness of demons. However, the demon in front of her was gradually influenced by people's hearts and became less ruthless. In the hall, Ning Chen came back to his senses. His heart was inexplicably shocked. The emotions in his eyes gradually disappeared, and they became cold again. At this moment, the divine restriction above the underworld opened. 2 figures descended from the sky. After traveling for many days, they finally returned. In the Wuchang Hall, Ning Chen felt something. He walked out of the hall and looked at the sky with a serious expression. "They're back. Let's go back to the King of Hell's Hall." Ning Chen came back to his senses. He glanced at the woman in the wheelchair in front of him. Then his figure flashed, and he flew toward the King of Hell's Hall in the distance. At the same time, in the halls of the underworld, the kings of the human race stood up one after another and walked toward the King of Hell's Hall. Not long after, in the King of Hell's Hall, the strong cultivators of the underworld gathered at the long table. They all looked at the 2 women who had returned from afar. "How come?" Ning Chen, who was at the head of the group, asked. The Night Master agreed to help. He promised to bring back a victory for the human race in the Battle of Halberds, Qing Ning replied. Hearing this, the kings of the underworld were delighted. This was really good news. What about the Battle of Swords? Does the number 1 pavilion have a suitable candidate? Beside Ji Ming, Xiazi asked calmly. No. Luo Fei shook her head gently and said, the number 1 pavilion does have a powerful swordsman. However, the Night Master didn't say anything about the Battle of Swords. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Was there still no solution to this battle? What's the strength of the first swordsman of the demon race? Kingjit. Half Imperial Path, Ningchen said calmly. Ningchen said calmly, his cultivation and sword skills are close to perfection. With the powerful blood of the Sky Devil royal family, Xuanqi is almost invincible under the Imperial Dao. Are we really going to give up on this game? Luo Xingchen said with a look of displeasure. Losing before the battle really made him feel uncomfortable. Not necessarily. Ningchen said with a cold face, the time and place of the competition are decided by us. The right time, the right place, and the right people are all indispensable factors to decide the outcome of the competition. Since there is a gap between our absolute strength, we have to think of a solution based on the right time and place. What is it? When everyone heard this, their eyes revealed strange expressions as they asked. Has anyone ever thought about what's the biggest difference between humans and heavenly devils? Ningchen asked seriously. Cultivation attribute. Mu Qianshang replied. Not bad. Ningchen nodded and said, good and evil, saint and devil, they will always exist in opposition. Right now, we are undoubtedly at a disadvantage compared to the primal devil realm. However, if we can take advantage of the time and place when we fight, our chances of victory will greatly increase. That's not right. At the side, Peacock frowned and said, "This method sounds good, but the emperors of the primal devil realm will never agree to such an unfair condition. They will definitely not agree, so we have to take a gamble." Ningchen said in a low voice, "If the time and place are right, every battle will change randomly, and both sides will have equal chances. I think that the emperors of the primal devil realm will have no reason to refuse. However, if that's the case, we won't have any advantage, so what's the use of deliberately doing this?" Luo Xingchen asked in confusion. "Not necessarily. The knowing destiny technique may really be useful." Mu Qianshang said, "Under normal circumstances, with our current candidates, what do you think our chances of victory are against the primal devil realm? We are almost certain to lose the sword duel. If the number 1 under heaven pavilion really wins the halberd duel as the Night Master said, then the human race and the primal devil realm will be tied. As for the remaining duels, saber, palm and spear, although we have experts participating, but due to the difference in cultivation against the 3 king realm experts of the Sky Devil Imperial family, our chances of victory are not high. If we must say, it's probably less than 30%. Luo Xingchen said honestly. "What if we add in the uncertain factors of time and place?" Mu Qianshang asked seriously. Hearing that, Luo Xingchen frowned slightly and said, "Adding in the right time and place, there are too many uncertain factors, it's impossible to estimate." "That's it." Mu Qianshang said seriously, "From less than 30% to impossible to estimate, that's the best result." In front of the long table, the kings of the underworld heard the former's words and nodded slightly in unison. It was indeed reasonable. Now, they were at a disadvantage in terms of strength compared to the primal devil realm. Since that was the case, they might as well add in more uncertain factors. In this way, the advantage of the primal devil realm would be evened out under many uncertain conditions. "Sister Qing Ning, I don't understand." Ning gently tugged at the clothes of the woman beside her and said pitifully, "You can understand it this way." Qing Ning looked at the girl beside her and said patiently, "The right time, place and people, 3 conditions. Originally, the deciding factor of victory was the right people. When there was only the right people, the primal devil realm had the absolute advantage. Now, with the addition of uncertainty and the right time and place, if the primal devil realm wants to win, other than the unchanging right people, they also have to look at the right time and place. Isn't it much more difficult?" Iner had heard it before and nodded as if she understood. It really seemed to be different. "Since no one has any objections, I will discuss our decision with the Lord of the Divine Land later. After that, it will be the negotiation between the 2 realms. According to my estimation, the time of the martial arts competition will be at least 3 months later. During this time, all of you just need to cultivate in peace." Ningchen said calmly. Hearing that, the kings nodded slightly and got up. After bidding farewell, they left one after another. Not long later, only Ming Ji and Peacock were left in the King of Hell's palace. "Miss Peacock, sorry to trouble you." Ningchen looked at the woman in the wheelchair and said, "It's what I should do." Peacock said calmly. Her hands formed a seal and the 5-colored divine light spread out from her body. The 5-colored divine light appeared again. Between the 2, time and space twisted and a huge vortex appeared out of thin air. At the same time, on the peak of the Crepe Myrtle Divine Land, a similar vortex appeared, connecting the underworld and the Divine Land. "Master!" In the vortex, 2 illusory figures appeared. Peacock bowed and said respectfully. In front of the peak, the Lord of the Divine Land turned around and looked at the 2 in the void. He said calmly, "Have you decided?" Beside Peacock, Ningchen nodded and told the elder in front of him the details of the discussion. The Lord of the Divine Land listened to every word of the former quietly. After a long silence, he nodded and said, "Yes." Hearing that, Ningchen's eyes flashed. He did not expect the Lord of the Divine Land to agree so easily. "Your blade has been destroyed in the previous battle. I have a divine weapon in the Divine Land called the Heavenly Song Honke. I will give it to you as a gift." As soon as he said that, the Lord of the Divine Land waved his right hand and a floating island in the distance shattered. In the shattered rocks, a blade light shot into the sky. A sky-blue divine weapon flew over quickly. Its extremely powerful aura shook the entire crepe myrtle divine land. At this moment, on the thousands of floating islands in the divine land, many human overlords looked at the flowing light in front of them. Their faces flashed with surprise. Heavenly Song Hankei, the realm lord, had actually given away this ancient divine weapon. On the peak, the divine weapon flew over and frost covered the ground. The shocking scene shocked everyone. In the vortex that connected the two places, Ning Chen did not refuse. He reached out and held the divine weapon. He bowed politely and said, "Thank you. I will personally talk to the emperors of the primordial demon realm about the conditions you mentioned. You don't have to show up. In the following time, you need to recover as soon as possible and prepare for the upcoming battle," the Lord of the Divine Land said seriously. "I understand." Ning Chen nodded and said no more. "Master, we'll take our leave first." After that, in the vortex, the two figures gradually faded and disappeared after a few breaths. The two left. On the peak, the Lord of the Divine Land turned around and looked into the distance. He said, "Venerable Chang Sheng." Very far away, on a large life planet, the fortune teller in cyan stopped and frowned. "Is it starting so soon?" "Not yet," the Lord of the Divine Land said calmly, "but there is indeed something that I need your help with." "Say it." The fortune teller in cyan was helpless. He was born to be busy, and it was difficult for him to take half a day's rest. There are two King Realm Masters in the Divine Land. Now their whereabouts are unknown. "Old friend, you are good at calculating the secrets of the heavens. Can you find their whereabouts?" The Lord of the Divine Land asked. "There are so many masters in the Divine Land and the Netherworld. Are they not enough? By the way, there is also the #1 pavilion in the world. Why do you make me tired to calculate the secrets of the heavens?" The fortune teller in cyan said unhappily. "It's better to be prepared. The human race can't afford to lose." The Lord of the Divine Land said solemnly, "Please, old friend." Hearing this, the fortune teller in cyan sighed softly and said, "Well, I hope your crazy decision is right." "Thank you." In the sky, the voice of the Lord of the Divine Land echoed for a long time. In the eastern hall of the impermanence of the Netherworld, the master of the Dawn Moon House sat quietly on the chessboard. She held two pieces and played chess with herself. The black and white chess game was fierce. Before the end, there would be black and white pieces disappearing from the chessboard at every move. They were ruthlessly sacrificed for the overall situation. On the side, Hong Wan came with tea. Looking at the man in front of her, she said softly, "Master, your tea." The master of the Dawn Moon House took the tea and took a sip. Her eyes did not leave the chessboard. She said calmly, "Hong Wan, who do you think will win between the black pieces and the white pieces?" "The black pieces," Hong Wan replied. "Oh." The master of the Dawn Moon House was surprised. She looked up at the girl in front of her and said, "Isn't the white pieces more advantageous in the current situation?" "It does seem so, but..." Speaking of this, Hong Wan changed her tone and said lightly, "The master likes the black pieces and has never lost." Chapter 1272. In the underworld, the 10 Yama halls. Time passed day by day. The 10 Yama halls were all in seclusion, preparing for the upcoming battle between the two realms. In the Yama hall, demonic chi surged. A powerful aura filled the entire primitive planet. In the Yin Sea Ghost Prison, the kings of the ghost race felt the terrifying demonic aura from the 10 Yama halls. They all felt depressed. "Your Majesty." The first elder of the ghost race stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Something big is about to happen in the human race." "I know." The Ghost King nodded on the white bone throne. "Your Majesty, don't you find it strange? Ever since we joined the human race, the 13th Prince has never given us any missions. Now, the human race is obviously plotting something big, but we still haven't received any news or orders. Does this mean that the 13th prince doesn't trust us at all? The first elder of the ghost race said in a low voice. Trust can't be built overnight, the Ghost King sighed. On the throne, the Ghost King lightly sighed and said, let's wait patiently. The ghost race and the human race are now on the same boat. Only when the human race obtains the strength of this war will the ghost race be safe. Hearing this, the first elder of the ghost race fell silent. He didn't know if joining the human race was right or wrong. How could the human race, who was obviously weaker, fight against the powerful primordial demon realm? Inji, go to the underworld and ask His Majesty if there is a place where the ghost race can work for us, the Ghost King said calmly. Okay. Inji walked out and bowed respectfully. Then she turned and left. Not long after, Inji walked to one of the 10 Yama halls, the Yama Hall. Looking at the 13th prince who was focused on healing, she bowed respectfully and said, Your Majesty. Inside the Yama Hall, Ning-Chen felt it. He looked at her calmly and said, What is it? The Ghost King sent me to ask if there is anything you need help with? Inji said seriously. Hearing this, Ning-Chen narrowed his eyes and said, Not at the moment. Go back and tell the Ghost King that there will be a good show between the human race and the primordial demon realm soon. When the time comes, the Ghost Kings will be invited to help. Hearing this, Inji's eyes became even more strange. What was it that involved the primordial demon realm? Inside the royal palace, Ning-Chen didn't say anything else. He closed his eyes and continued to recuperate. At the front, Inji silently turned around and flew toward the In-Sea ghost prison. Do you really not trust them? Behind Ning-Chen, Peacock asked. Trust is difficult. Ning-Chen said calmly, We need to prove that the human clan is worthy of the ghost clan's trust. The ghost clan also needs to show their sincerity. It's still too early for that. Before we can show our strength, it's meaningless to talk about trust. Peacock nodded. That was indeed the case. Only when one was strong enough would one be able to intimidate their followers. The human race needed to prove their strength. After a short interlude, King Yenlua's palace was restored to its original state. With Peacock's help, Ning-Chen continued to heal his injured body. Demonic energy rose again, surging violently. Just as the kings of the underworld were doing their best to prepare for the duel between the kings of the two realms, the ruler of the divine realm of Zi-Wei personally appeared to discuss the details of the duel with the emperors of the demon realm. The negotiations could not be considered smooth. Both sides argued endlessly over the details. After a full 3 months, the two territories barely reached a consensus. The day of the debate was close at hand. When the news came, the kings of the underworld opened their eyes and walked out of their palaces one after another. Let's go. Ning-Chen glanced at the crowd and said calmly. Immediately, his figure flashed and flew toward the starry sky. In front of the king palaces, all the potential kings of the human clans stepped forward and chased after him. The kings in charge of guarding the underworld looked at the streaks of flowing light in the sky and their eyes were filled with worry. This duel was related to the future of the entire human clan. They could not afford to lose it. In the In-Sea ghost prison of the Ghost Clan, with the Ghost King as the leader, In-Ji and 3 elders of the Ghost Clan moved together and chased after the kings of the underworld. At the border of Alcade Galaxy and Red Phoenix Galaxy, the 3 emperors of the human clan and the 4 sovereigns of the demon realm all appeared and worked together to open up a battlefield. Small worlds appeared one after another. Some were scorching hell, some were icy and snowy, some were filled with demonic energy, some were filled with holy light. Different small worlds appeared one after another, adding more variables to the upcoming duel between the two realms. At this moment, from all over the starry sky, streaks of flowing light flew toward their respective camps. On the side of the demon realm, in the small worlds opened up by the 4 sovereigns of the demon realm, the powerhouses representing the primordial demon realm appeared one after another. Xian Mo, Azura, Xian Qi, Garuda, Xian Lai, Luojia, which Empress of the Dark Moon. One after another, the demon realm powerhouses who stood at the peak of the king realm appeared. With the heavenly devil royal family as the leader, the other 4 royal families also sent powerhouses to battle. Similarly, on the side of the human clan, Ning-Chen, Peacock, Xiazi, the Dawn Moonhouse Master, Mu Qianshang, and the others all arrived. Then, the Night Master and Gu Shengtian arrived. All the powerhouses of the human clan arrived and made the final preparations for the upcoming duel. The duel was about to begin. In the small world, the master of the godly realm looked at the fortune teller in green beside him and asked solemnly, "Is there still time?" "There should be enough time." The fortune teller in green nodded and said seriously, looking at the time, "It's almost time." As soon as he finished speaking, a blue flowing light flew over from afar. It was as light as a dance and was so beautiful that it caught everyone's attention. "This is?" In front of the human clan's kings, Ningchen felt something and looked at the starry sky in the distance with a shocked expression. Senior Sister Dai. On the side of the primordial demon realm, the demon clan's powerhouses also saw the flowing light coming from afar and were surprised. They only arrived now. Was this the human clan's secret weapon? Who is she? Xian Lai frowned and asked. I've never seen her before. She should be a hidden powerhouse of the human clan, the Dark Moon Witch Empress said seriously. The strength of her aura is average. How powerful can she be? Garuda snorted coldly and said disdainfully. Don't underestimate the enemy. Azura, the war god of the demon clan, said coldly, there are too many amazing powerhouses among the human clan. Underestimating the enemy will only expose your ignorance. Garuda heard this and stopped breathing, but he could not refute. In the human clan's small world, the arrival of Butterfly in the Flower shocked the human clan's kings and they quickly recovered from their shock. Senior Sister Dai. Ningchen looked at the blue-clothed and blood-red-haired woman in front of him and called out. In front of him was a beautiful woman who stood barefoot. She was petite but had unimaginable tenacity. The knife god Butterfly in Flower had returned and increased the combat power of the human clan. Junior brother, long time no see. Butterfly in Flower looked at the young man in front of her and said with a sweet smile. Didn't the female supreme come with Senior Sister Dai? Ningchen was confused. The female supreme was swept too far away by the spatial turbulence. She might not be able to make it back before the end of this battle. However, Venerable Chongqing said that the female supreme is fine. Don't worry, Butterfly in Flower said softly. Ningchen heard this and nodded slightly. He felt somewhat regretful that the female supreme could not participate in the battle. Behind them, Qin Ning looked at the woman in front of her and said, Since Miss Dai has made it back, Miss Dai will participate in the Battle of the Knife. Ningchen nodded. This was without a doubt. He had learned his knife skills from Senior Sister Dai. Although it was passable, there was still a big gap between him and Senior Sister Dai. Even though the Knowing Destiny state does not need to participate in the Battle of the Knife, the Knowing Destiny state must participate in one of the battles of the sword and palm, Mu Qianshang said seriously. The strength of the Knowing Destiny state was definitely one of the best among the human kings. If the Knowing Destiny state did not participate in the battle, it would be a great loss to the human race. The Knowing Destiny state's strongest skill is the sword. Why don't they participate in the battle of the sword? Luo Xingchen said. All the kings, except Xiazi, nodded in agreement. It's not appropriate. At the back, Peacock said seriously, even the Knowing Destiny Marquis does not have a high chance of winning against Xian Qi. Everyone should know that every battle has its limits. If it's purely a battle of the sword, Xian Qi is almost unbeatable under the absolute suppression of cultivation. The strength of the Knowing Destiny state lies in balance. This battle is too restrictive for him. His chances of winning are slim. Hearing this, the kings thought carefully and fell silent. In the battle of the sword, we can only gamble. In fact, it doesn't make much of a difference who participates. Ningchen said, I'll still participate in this battle. Xiazi said calmly, My friend, you should know that the chances of winning this battle are extremely low. Ningchen said seriously, I understand. Xiazi said faintly, Someone needs to participate in this battle, don't you think? If that's the case, then the Knowing Destiny Marquis will represent me in the Battle of the Palms. Peacock said seriously, No matter if the opponent is Luo Jia or Xianlai, the Knowing Destiny Marquis Foundation is inferior. It's more suitable for the Knowing Destiny Marquis to participate in this battle. Ning Chen nodded and agreed. This might be the best outcome. While everyone was talking, the time of the battle was approaching. In the middle of the two realms, small worlds were completed. 6 small worlds kept rotating like the 6 paths of reincarnation, changing unpredictably. Now, let's prepare to draw the category of the first battle. At this moment, above the void, the primordial demon realm and the human sovereign spoke. I'll go. In the human camp, Qing Ning said softly, and then she flew into the sky. In the demon realm camp, the dark moon witch Empress moved and flew into the sky together. In the void, the two of them arrived in front of a huge wheel. They stretched out their hands and pressed on the wheel. In the next moment, the sky was filled with multicolored light. The wheel spun and the words saber, spear, sword, halberd, and palm kept changing, affecting everyone's heart. After a few breaths, the wheel stopped, and a huge word, halberd, appeared in front of everyone. It was dazzling. Garuda, it's your turn. Azura looked at the man beside him and said, Garuda responded faintly and immediately flew forward. In the human camp, under everyone's gazes, the Knight Patriarch walked out and said calmly, I will bring back victory in this battle. As soon as he finished speaking, the Knight Patriarch's figure flew out and toward the small world in front of him. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.